Chapter 523. While the battle was going on in Martial Spirit City, Emperor Shui Yi was in a dilemma. He was very shocked. The Soul Master Alliance had actually warned him not to act rashly. Wasn't this a little too arrogant? He was the emperor of the Heaven Do Empire. Not only did an alliance dare to ignore him, but they even wanted to destroy his rule in the future. Shui Yi was seriously provoked. However, Shui Yi was very clear about the strength of the Soul Master Alliance. They were too strong. Now that all the Soul Master factions in the Heaven Do Empire had joined the Soul Master Alliance, the Heaven Do Empire couldn't resist such an opponent. He only hated himself now for not realizing their intentions earlier. He was so proud of himself back then, saying that he would only exempt them from taxes for 2 years. All he could think about was the beautiful future. Now, it seemed like he was a joke back then. He didn't even realize that he had fallen into their trap. But now, he had a hand over his empire to someone else. He was really unwilling to do so. At this moment, Shui even hoped that the Martial Spirit Hall wouldn't be defeated. That way, the Soul Master Alliance wouldn't have time to care about the Heaven Do Empire. However, this was only a temporary solution. No matter what the situation was, the Heaven Do Empire would be annexed by the Soul Master Alliance. This organization controlled almost 90% of the Soul Masters in the Heaven Do Empire. Even the 3 upper sects had joined. There were more than 10 titled Douluo powerhouses. This was especially so for the Marvel family's leader, Thanos. The Heaven Do Empire's army was like paper in front of such a powerhouse. Shui couldn't think of anything other than praying against such a power. Martial Spirit City. At this moment, there was a huge battle in the city center. In the sky, Tang San and Tang Chun were fighting Thousand Douluo. As the destined child of Douluo's world, Tang San was still very strong, especially under Lin Feng's guidance. He was much stronger than he was in the original novel. Although he was only at the level of Soul Douluo, he could unleash the strength of a rank 99 Soul Master with the help of his divine weapon, Soul Ring and Soul Bone. As the possessor of the Angel Martial Spirit, Qian Dao Lu had a great advantage in the air. However, he could only barely defend against the combined attacks of the 2 experts. Down below, the protective cover formed by the consecrators and elders of the Martial Spirit Palace was already in danger. Douluo from the Soul Master Alliance had improved tremendously over the past year because of the soul power control technique. On the other hand, those from the Martial Soul Hall had remained stagnant. In this situation, the Martial Spirit Hall would run out of soul power in at most half a minute. On the other side, the battle between Thanos and BB Dong was not as intense. Because Thanos wanted to capture BB Dong alive, he didn't take the initiative to attack during the fight. He just kept dodging and wasting BB Dong's soul power. It was only when BB Dong wanted to recover his soul force that Thanos took the initiative to attack. In this way, BB Dong's soul power was being rapidly consumed. Moreover, Thanos had deliberately shifted the battlefield during the battle, separating BB Dong from the others. In this way, it was difficult for others to support her, and Thanos was more confident in capturing her alive. Swish! The Rakshasa scimitar in BB Dong's hand tore through space and instantly appeared in front of Thanos. However, Thanos seemed to have expected it and easily dodged. At this point, the two had been fighting for a minute. 1 minute was not long, but in the eyes of experts, such a long time was enough for you to be killed hundreds of times. At first, BB Dong thought that as long as she could hold on for a while, she would have a chance to break the rules and break through to rank 100. However, Thanos was too cunning. He kept dodging and had very little time to attack. Under such circumstances, BB Dong couldn't comprehend anything at all. They had to fight head-on. After the scimitar missed again, BB Dong mocked, "Why are you like a mouse? Don't you even have the courage to fight me head-on?" Thanos didn't say a word and directly used spatial imprisonment to envelop BB Dong. Want to stop and rest? No way. BB Dong was definitely anxious now. In terms of her intentions, Thanos could guess. There were only 2 possibilities. First, she wanted to provoke him and make him fight head-on. Second, she wanted to buy time and talk to distract him while taking the opportunity to recover her soul power. Of course, there was a third possibility, which was to find a way to escape. But no matter which one it was, Thanos Overlord would not let it succeed. BB Dong should be captured alive by him today. Looking down, the protective barrier was about to break. In order to prevent BB Dong from abandoning everyone and escaping alone, Thanos turned the Thousand Manipulation Ruler into a giant net and surrounded the area where the two were fighting. Although this net wasn't very sturdy, it could still stop BB Dong for a moment. Thanos also contaminated BB Dong's body with many fragments of the Thousand Manipulation Ruler. Unless she could run out of the range of his spiritual power in an instant, BB Dong wouldn't be able to escape. After everything was settled, Thanos' eyes focused. The Thousand Manipulation Ruler turned into a spear and suddenly swung it to the left. Dang! The Rakshasa scimitar that flew diagonally just happened to hit the spear and was sent flying. BB Dong's expression didn't change. She quickly retracted her scimitar and continued to attack. On Thanos' side, his expression was refreshed, because through this exchange, he found that BB Dong's soul power was not much. The reason why Thanos didn't use paralysis or life absorption before was that on one hand, he didn't want BB Dong to comprehend the operation of soul power. On the other hand, BB Dong's soul power was special and could resist these characteristics. But now, BB Dong's soul power was much weaker. If he absorbed life force and used paralysis, it would be effective. Thinking about it, the giant net that was condensed earlier suddenly shrank and wrapped towards the middle. The light above flickered. Before it got close, BB Dong felt a great threat from it. She wanted to resist, but at the same time, Thanos also made his move. Suddenly, countless ribbons appeared around her. They were multicolored and looked very gorgeous. But BB Dong knew that these things were extremely dangerous. If she encountered them, there wouldn't be any good results. Thinking about it, BB Dong's soul power condensed into a ball and shook it towards the surroundings, sweeping away these ribbons. However, how could Thanos' attack be so simple? While the ribbons were shaken, they directly split into countless thin threads and continued to wrap towards BB Dong. At the same time, the giant net on the periphery also suddenly shrank, wrapping BB Dong tightly. This series of attacks was extremely fast. BB Dong didn't have time to react at all and was directly trapped. For a time, Thanos' soul power suddenly increased, and the paralysis toxin quickly invaded BB Dong's body. Her life force was also rapidly decreasing, and her soul power was also rapidly consumed. At this moment, the layer of armor on BB Dong's body was broken, and Thanos' attacks were all real. In less than a few seconds, as the effect of the paralysis toxin became stronger and stronger, BB Dong's spirit became more and more dispirited, and soon fell asleep. At this point, after more than a minute of delay, BB Dong was finally captured alive by Thanos. The Thousand Machine Ruler turned into a rope and directly tied BB Dong up tightly. The Rakshasa scimitar in her hand was also imprisoned by Thanos' soul power and then tied together. After that, Thanos reacted quickly and didn't immediately go down. Instead, he split out his main body and then the two of them attacked, creating the illusion that they were still fighting. Furthermore, the giant net was also erected, as if Thanos' attack didn't work and BB Dong was still counterattacking. The reason why Lin Feng did this was because he only had one goal, and that was to defeat the entire Martial Spear Hall. He wanted to give others confidence, especially the Thousand Dao School. Otherwise, if BB Dong was defeated, the Thousand Dao School would definitely flee. The Angel's flying speed wasn't slower than his, and it even had some special soul skills. Lin Feng wasn't 100% confident that he could catch up. Therefore, he needed to stabilize the situation. At the same time, Lin Feng artificially moved the battlefield towards the Thousand Dao School and even imitated BB Dong's voice to berate Thanos. In Douluo's world, there were also people who used schemes when fighting, but there were fewer of them. This was because Soul Masters preferred to fight straightforwardly, and they had less experience, so their battle thinking was limited by this era. As for Lin Feng, he had seen too many things in novels and television dramas. As for schemes and whatnot, even if he wasn't familiar with them, he would at least imitate them. Under such circumstances, Thanos easily deceived the Thousand Dao School and the others, causing everyone to mistakenly think that BB Dong was still fighting. Below, the barrier formed by the few consecrators and elders had already reached its limit. They didn't have much soul power left in their bodies. Second consecrator, we can't hold on any longer. Once our soul power is exhausted, we will definitely die. Let's hurry up and retreat. An elder shouted. Actually, everyone knew this, but BB Dong was still fighting, which represented their hope. As long as they could hold on for another second, BB Dong would break through and become a god. However, this second was extremely difficult. As time passed, their hope became less and less, and the pressure in their hearts became greater and greater. The elder's words were like a fuse that had been lit. Soon, someone else shouted, "That's right, second consecrator, the city gate has been blocked. Let's retreat to the Martial Soul Mountain. We can still defend there. I remember there's still a formation there. As long as we retreat, we can hold on for a while longer." Everyone chimed in. Originally, the second consecrator was prepared to hold on. They still had soul stones on them. If they absorbed and resisted, they could at least hold on for a minute. However, what they said was too reasonable, and the second consecrator's heart wavered. He directly shouted, "Everyone, prepare to retreat." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's soul power instantly gathered together and exploded in all directions. The power of this explosion was extremely strong. Even Golden Hoop, Douluo, and the rest did not dare to take it head-on. They could only retreat. However, at this moment, Lin Feng made his move. It was his original body. He directly teleported down and arrived above the second consecrator and the rest. He held a carved staff in his hand and swung it down without hesitation. Originally, this carved staff was only 2 meters long, but with the infusion of his soul power, it directly became 10 meters long, covering all the soul masters below. Boom! Soul power exploded in the air. The power passed through the air and directly transmitted to the group of people. Puffed. They could not dodge at all. They were easily hit and vomited blood. What a joke. Lin Feng took advantage of this group of people's soul power to attack when they had just finished erupting. In addition, it was a sneak attack. It would be strange if there were no results. Then, without giving this group of people any time to react, Lin Feng's thousand trickery ruler appeared and turned into thin threads that covered the sky, attaching themselves to this group of people. Paralyzing poison and life extraction were activated. Soon, this group of people was knocked out by Lin Feng and fell to the ground. The things that Mr. Destroy gave me are actually so useful. They were knocked out in an instant. Lin Feng smiled. He deliberately said this to explain why he was so strong. As for exposing himself, that did not exist. In everyone's minds, the Marvel family was almost omnipotent. No matter how ridiculous something was, as long as it was said that it was Thanos who did it, they would believe it. Feng, you were too fierce just now. You blew up a group of people with a single staff. Xiao Wu ran over with a look of admiration. Just that attack just now had some of Mr. Destroy's style. It was a pity that Ning Rongrong, Dai Mu Bai, and the others didn't come over except for her and Tang San. They stayed back in the Soul Master Alliance. Otherwise, based on the situation just now, Ning Rongrong would probably shout excitedly. After all, he was too handsome. It's all thanks to Mr. Destroy's things. Lin Feng smiled. The others were not so close to Lin Feng. At this time, they were just looking at him in shock from afar. Seeing this, Lin Feng said, "Capture these people. From now on, they will be the Soul Master Alliance's training partners." Yes, everyone answered in unison. Previously, in everyone's eyes, Lin Feng had a special status in the Alliance. The main reason was that he had Thanos behind him. Also, the Alliance Master, Tang San, was his younger brother. Because of these reasons, Lin Feng had such a high status. However, in terms of strength, he should not be strong. But right now, Lin Feng had knocked 10 titled Douluo unconscious with a single strike. Furthermore, the timing and courage that he had displayed in his attack had convinced them. And now that they thought about it, They did not seem to have sensed Lin Feng's soul power fluctuations. Was it covered up by the previous impact? Or was it because he was so strong that they could not sense it at all? No matter what, Lin Feng's strength was already very strong. He was worthy of his current status. On Lin Feng's side, only a small part of his attention was on the ground. Most of his attention was still on the 1,000 Dao flow in the sky. His avatar was very close to that side. He could only wait for a good opportunity to attack and cooperate with Tang Chun and the others to injure or even kill the 1,000 Dao flow. The 1,000 Dao flow would not become a god, so in Lin Feng's heart, it was not very important. If he could capture them alive, he would capture them alive. It did not matter if he killed them. Chapter 5:24. Now, Bibi Dong had been captured, and so had the worshippers and elders of the Martial Spirit City. The Martial Spirit Hall was definitely going to be destroyed today. When 1,000 Daos Lu discovered the abnormality, he was shocked and wanted to retreat. Scram! With a roar, the angelic sword in 1,000 Daos Lu's hand shone with dazzling light. The 6 wings on his back flapped, and a pillar of light shot into the sky with unparalleled power. It pushed Tang San and Tang Chun away. Following that, 1,000 Daos Lu flapped his wings and flew towards the Martial Spirit Mountain. On the other hand, the Martial Spirit Mountain shone brightly, as if it was resonating with 1,000 Daos Lu. Clearly, 1,000 Daos Lu had already made preparations on the Martial Spirit Mountain. Otherwise, he wouldn't have escaped in that direction. However, Lin Feng had been observing him the entire time, waiting for him to escape. At this moment, 1,000 Daos Lu had just used a large-scale soul skill, so his soul power was sluggish. Lin Feng's attack was just right. Furthermore, his timing was extremely accurate. Just as 1,000 Daos Lu flew a distance away and heaved a sigh of relief, Lin Feng merged with his body and teleported in front of 1,000 Daos Lu. In his hand, he smashed down with the long staff that exuded an unparalleled aura. Oh no! 1,000 Daos Lu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The 6 wings on his back immediately wrapped around him, and he shone with golden light. At this moment, it was too late for him to dodge. He could only use all his strength to block this attack. Bang! With a muffled sound, Lin Feng's staff hit 1,000 Daos Lu's wings. The golden light on the wings formed a protective barrier, and Lin Feng felt a great resistance from it. Unfortunately, 1,000 Daos Lu was in a hurry to block it, and he didn't have time to use much of his soul power. Although the golden light was tenacious, it was still lacking in front of Lin Feng's staff. Break! Lin Feng's soul power suddenly increased, and he used all the soul skills in the 1,000 Trickery Ruler. All kinds of characteristics were added to the staff. In an instant, the golden light was extinguished, and the 6 wings on 1,000 Daos Lu's back were broken. Following that, the staff continued to swing down and smashed into 1,000 Daos Lu's chest. Pooh! Qian Daolu spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky. He smashed through the house below and landed on the ground. Before he could recover, Lin Feng had already landed beside him. The 1,000 manipulation ruler in his hand turned into a fine net and tied him up. The toxins accumulated in the thousands of streams of fluid, and his life force was constantly being sucked away. Soon, he followed in Bibi Dong's footsteps and fainted. First, he had been ambushed by Lin Feng and was heavily injured by a single strike of his staff. Now, he had been poisoned and his life force was constantly being sucked away. 1,000 Streams was already on the verge of death. In order to prevent him from dying, Lin Feng immediately stopped extracting life force. At the same time, he also sent some life force to him. After a few seconds, 1,000 Dao Lu's life was finally saved. Although the 1,000 Stream was not as important to Lin Feng as it was to Bai Dong, it was still worth a few billion experience points. It would be best if he didn't die. That's right, Qianren Shue would be able to inherit the angel deity position when the time came. This old thing was still somewhat useful. After harvesting the 1,000 Streams wool, he would be able to harvest Qianren Shue. Thinking about this, Lin Feng's mood improved a little. Elder Mia captured Bibi Dong and 1,000 streams alive. This battle is the first merit. Congratulations to Eldamia. Congratulations to the Alliance. After seeing Lin Feng capture 1,000 streams alive, Golden Hoop, Douluo, and Hong Yifeng shouted excitedly. Their voices resounded throughout the entire martial spirit city. Congratulations to Eldamia. Congratulations to the Alliance. Congratulations to Eldamia. Congratulations to the Alliance. Congratulations to Eldamia. Congratulations to the Alliance. Everyone responded one after another, letting out excited shouts. The one that was destroyed was the Martial Spear Hall. It used to be the #1 faction in the world. Even the two empires were afraid of it. But now it was destroyed by the Soul Master Alliance. Furthermore, there were no casualties. They were destroyed without any injuries. Most importantly, the results of the battle were extremely good. The elders and consecrators of the Martial Spirit Hall, including the head consecrator, 1,000 Streams, and Pope Bibi Dong, were all captured alive. Even a god might not be able to complete such a task. After all, there were too many people. If they really wanted to escape, they would have to scatter, and it would be difficult to capture all of them. But now, with the help of everyone, Thanos did it. This kind of thing was too shocking. Everyone looked at Thanos with eyes full of worship and admiration. At this moment, the few titled Douluo who were blocking the entrance were escorting the escaping Soul Masters towards the center of Martial Spirit City. Thanos also waved his hand. Bibi Dong, who was imprisoned in the air, slowly landed in front of him. At this moment, Thanos held Bibi Dong in his right hand and 1,000 Streams in his left. Although he didn't say a word and there were no soul power fluctuations on his body, his power made everyone in awe. Soon, Thanos said with a smile, today, the destruction of the Martial Spirit Hall is the blessing of the Alliance and the continent. Next, we can't be arrogant. We must continue to unify the continent. Let the glory of the Alliance spread across the continent, and let the glory of the Alliance benefit all people. As soon as he finished speaking, the system prompt sounded. Ding! After an intense battle, the host captured a group of powerhouses of the Martial Spirit Hall alive. Combat experience has increased. Experience points +1 328624815. A battle involving all the powerhouses of the Martial Spirit Hall. Although it was very short, the process was very thrilling. Originally, Lin Feng's psychological expectation was 1 billion experience points. He didn't expect to get an extra 300 million experience points in the end, which was quite surprising. Congratulations to the Alliance. Everyone shouted excitedly, venting the excitement in their hearts. After everyone's mood calmed down a little, Slayer Overlord said, Sect Master Ning, you organize it and take care of the Martial Spirit Palace's consecrators and elders. Alliance Master Tang, take some people to the Martial Spirit Palace's warehouse and loot it. Also, after a brief arrangement, everyone dispersed and went to do their own things. Thanos himself was responsible for looking after Qian Lu and Bibi Dong. They were at the peak of rank 99, Douluo, and had taken the divine examination. Bibi Dong, especially, was not far from becoming a god. Against such a powerful soul master, Lin Feng had to use several layers of soul power to seal him. Furthermore, he had to use his unique 1,000 trickery ruler to restrain him. This method of trapping people was to integrate the 1,000 trickery ruler into their bodies and directly cut off their soul power supply. In this way, as long as they made any strange movements, Lin Feng could stop them from the root. Of course, this kind of thing required extremely powerful soul power control and some time. So, Lin Feng directly took the two of them into a house next to him. Next, he used the 1,000 trickery ruler to slowly control the two of them. At the same time, Ning Fengji organized the elders to set up defenses in the surroundings and arrange for the captives of the Martial Spirit Hall. Tang San took Xiao Wu and Lin Feng's clone to the warehouse of the Martial Spirit Hall to plunder things. There were also a few titled Douluo at the city gate. It would not be long before they could escort the Soul Masters to the Martial Spirit Mountain. By the way, Tang Chun was already very respectful to Thanos Lord at this time. In his heart, Thanos' overlord had already been equated with a god. It couldn't be helped. Thanos was too strong. He easily beat Tang Chun. Now, it only took him a few minutes to capture Bibi Dong and Qian Douluo. He did not even dare to think about such a result. He had to be convinced. In the warehouse of the Martial Spirit Hall, Xiao Wu said with a smile, "Third brother, look, there are so many soul bones here. Although they're not very old, they can still be absorbed." Soul bones were different from soul rings. Their age did not affect one's strength as much as soul rings, but it still affected one's strength. However, these effects could be eliminated as time passed. That was why Xiao Wu recommended Tang San to absorb them now. Lin Feng nodded and said, "Xiao San, you can absorb these too. However, there are no torso bones here. You'll have to find one when the time comes." "Okay." Tang San nodded in response. Wow, there are so many soul stones and materials. The warehouse of the Martial Spirit Hall is almost comparable to the Soul Master Alliances. Xiao was very happy. The warehouse of the Soul Master Alliance was mainly managed by Flanders. Xiao Wu had also become a deputy manager over the past month, so she was also in charge of this. The number of materials is about the same, but the quality is much better than ours. Furthermore, there are soul bones here, which we don't have. Tang San smiled. Soul bones were very precious. Basically, no one would exchange them for contribution points. In terms of materials, most of them were ordinary materials. There were very few precious ones, and even fewer people were willing to exchange them for them. The warehouse of the Martial Spirit Hall was the accumulation of the Martial Spirit Hall over many years. Originally, Bibi Dong wanted to move them away early. However, the higher-ups of the Martial Spirit Hall were in Martial Spirit City. She was afraid that they would be stolen if they went to the Star Luo Empire. In the end, Bibi Dong did not ask anyone to move them away. She left them in the city. She thought that as long as she could win, no one would be able to take everything away from her. In the end, Bibi Dong lost, and everything became Lin Feng's spoils of war. As they talked, Tang San and Xiao Wu quickly put the items into their soul tools. When the time came, they would bring them back to Heaven Do City, where the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance was located. At this moment, Lin Feng suddenly said, "Xiao San, Martial Spirit City's location is a little special. It's between two empires. Let's make it the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance in the future. When the time comes, we'll unify the continent. With this place as the center, it'll be more convenient for both sides." Martial Spirit City. Due to its special location, there were no other cities within a few hundred miles of it. Although it was a little desolate, its strategic location was very good. There was no need to worry about being attacked or ambushed by conventional armies. In Lin Feng's opinion, when Martial Spirit City became the center of the continent, it would definitely expand to its surroundings. It would also be turned into the economic and cultural center of the world. This way, they would have more influence. What a good idea. In that case, we won't need to take these materials. In the future, this place will be the main warehouse of the Soul Master Alliance. At this moment, Tang San said, "Fenggu, the Soul Master Alliance's influence on the continent is not big enough. If we move the headquarters too early, the Snowy Night Emperor might do something." Currently, the Snowy Night Emperor was sullen and didn't dare to do anything. Although the main reason was that the Soul Master Alliance was too strong, the large number of experts around the palace was also a big reason. With so many experts who could rush to your face and beat you up, it would be strange if you weren't afraid. Don't worry. So what if they do something? No matter how many ants there are, do you think they can bite an elephant to death? It wasn't that Lin Feng was bragging. The Heaven Do Empire's strength was only SOSO. Even if there were any movements, he could easily suppress them. That makes sense. When are we moving here? Tang San asked. There's no time to lose. Today, I'll send someone to inform the entire continent that the Soul Master Alliance will unify the continent and move the headquarters to Martial Spirit City. Before attacking the Martial Spirit Hall, Lin Feng had already made preparations. Everything was under his control. Thinking of this, Lin Feng waved his hand and took out a list of plans. Then, he handed it to Tang San. "Xiao San, there are detailed plans on this list. Take a good look. I'll leave this matter to you. I still have to make a trip to the star Luo Empire. Lin Feng had previously agreed with Dai Mu Bai that after taking down the martial spirit hall, he would go to the star Luo Empire to change the regime. Okay. Tang Xin took it and nodded. Seeing this, Lin Feng nodded. Familiarize yourself with Martial Spirit City with Xiao Wu first. I'll take my leave first. With that, Lin Feng didn't stay in the warehouse for long and quickly left. The Star Luo Empire was different from the Heavendo Empire. It was the headquarters of the Martial Spirit Hall and was formed by many forces. Now that the Martial Spirit Hall was destroyed, there was likely to be chaos there. Lin Feng still needed a lot of time to completely take over the Star Luo Empire. Of course, this was only a waste of time. It wasn't a difficult task. The most important thing now was to unify the continent in name. When that time came, Lin Feng would publicize his situation, and his reputation would soar to the sky. With that thought, Lin Feng went outside and roughly told Ning Fengji what he had said to Tang San. Ning Fengji was a man of action, and he did things with ease. Previously, Lin Feng had asked him to do the publicity. Now that he was asked to publicize again, the news of the Soul Master Alliance destroying the Martial Spirit Hall and unifying the entire continent would spread in a few days. After explaining things, Lin Feng went to find Dai Mu Bai and discussed with him what to do after going to the Star Luo Empire. Soon, 10 minutes had passed. Thanos had already put shackles on Thousand Streams and BB Dong. He didn't have to worry about them suddenly going berserk and hurting people. If they wanted to use their soul power, Lin Feng would set up shackles to restrict them. At the same time, he would punish them by injuring them. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to wake them up. It would be better if they were unconscious. At least, there wouldn't be any accidents. At the same time, the several title battle pet warriors who had stopped people of the city gate arrived at the foot of the Martial Soul Mountain with several hundred people. BB Dong's disciple, Gulaina, was among them. Chapter 525. The war to destroy the Martial Spirit Hall was carried out very quickly. Apart from many houses in the city center that were destroyed, the other places were relatively intact. Under Ning Fengji's lead, the messy houses were quickly cleaned up, and the Soul Masters of the Martial Spirit Hall were also escorted to the nearby housing area. Hulaina was also among these people. After being captured, she had thought of resisting. However, their opponent was Douluo, a titled Soul Master who was extremely strong. Attacking such a strong master was tantamount to an ant trying to shake a tree. They would only be courting death. More importantly, Douluo said that these titled Soul Masters wouldn't be killed as long as they stayed put. No one would risk their lives. Even the Pope, BB Dong, and the Great Consecrator had been captured. Everyone had no target to resist, and they were a little discouraged. In fact, Lin Feng's decision to capture BB Dong and the others alive was very correct. This not only dealt a blow to their mentality, but also didn't make them despair. Otherwise, if the people of the Martial Spirit Hall were really destroyed, they might fight to the death. But now, everyone knew that BB Dong and the others were still alive, and the Soul Master Alliance didn't intend to kill anyone. This was something to look forward to. When Ning Fengji publicized the situation in the Martial Spirit City on the continent, the Star Luo Empire might not resist too much. Of course, all of this was just a guess. The specific situation would depend on the follow-up. Thinking of this, Lin Feng and Thanos walked out of the room. This room was now the focus of everyone's attention. After all, BB Dong and Douluo, the two peak masters of the Thousand Dao sect, were inside. When the two of them came out, everyone looked at them. Thanos looked at Tang Chun and said, "Now, BB Dong and Thousand Dao sect's soul power has been sealed by me in a special way. Their strength is greatly restricted. However, their Douluo, who is at the peak of rank 99. Maybe they have some special means." Tang Chun, guard the two of them. Yes. Tang Chun was in awe of Thanos at this time and immediately nodded. After saying that, he quickly stood at the door and became a door god. At this moment, Lin Feng said to Golden Hoop, Elder Hong, take 3 people and guard the surroundings to prevent any accidents from happening. Although the possibility of an accident was very small, or even non-existent, Lin Feng still had to do what he had to do. After giving his instructions, Lin Feng did not rush to find Dai Mu Bai. Instead, he walked towards the eastern housing area. That was where the Soul Master Alliance was keeping their captives. There were more than 300 people there, and most of them were soul sages. There were also quite a few soul Douluo. When Lin Feng walked over, he didn't try to hide anything. Instead, he walked openly. After all, it wasn't something shameful. Soon, Lin Feng, accompanied by Thanos, arrived at the housing area. "Greetings, Elder Mia, Elder Lin." One of the titled standing guard greeted them respectfully as soon as he arrived. Lin Feng had displayed fighting strength at the level of a titled Douluo. Therefore, he was directly promoted to an Elder of the Soul Master Alliance. In addition to his identity, even a titled Douluo was very respectful to him. "Let's go in and take a look." Lin Feng nodded and quickly walked towards the housing area. Although it was said to be a housing area, it was actually a large square. More than 300 people were in this square, and no one was in their rooms. After all, the rooms were blind spots, and it was much more difficult to guard them. The square was very noisy, and people were discussing everywhere. Some were talking about the situation of the Soul Master Alliance. Some were talking about their own future, and some were even plotting how to save Bibi Dong, Qian Daolu, and the others. However, all these discussions disappeared when Lin Feng and Thanos arrived at the front of the square. Everyone turned their eyes and looked at Thanos, Overlord, with awe. For the strong, the people on the Douluo continent admired them very much, especially Thanos Ba, who could defeat the entire continent. They admired him very much. Now, Thanos' iconic white robe and white mask appeared in front of them. Everyone was in awe of him from the bottom of their hearts. This kind of awe didn't contain any hostile thoughts. It was just respect for powerful people. However, everyone's expressions soon darkened. This was because they realized that they were all prisoners of the Soul Master Alliance, and a powerful person like Thanos was on the opposite side of them. Thanos didn't walk forward. Instead, he stopped at the edge of the square and waited quietly. Lin Feng continued to walk into the square. His goal was very clear, and he walked to the left. Everyone was intimidated by Thanos, and no one dared to do anything. They didn't even dare to breathe heavily. When Lin Feng came to their side, they all retreated and opened a path for him. Lin Feng's target was Hulaina. At this moment, she was at the back of the crowd. She didn't have any impression of Lin Feng's appearance. It was very vague, and she didn't know who was walking towards them. However, she didn't know why, but at this moment, she had a premonition that Lin Feng was coming for her. As Lin Feng got closer and closer, Hulaina's premonition became clearer and clearer. Slowly, the people in front of her all retreated, and even the people around her dispersed. At the same time, Lin Feng stopped and looked at Hulaina quietly. At this moment, Hulaina's heart was in a mess, and she thought a lot. Who is this person in front of me? Why is he looking for me? Is it Yongin? It feels so familiar. His figure is similar, but why is his appearance different? Also, the reason why Hulaina had the courage to stand there and not move was because of her previous guess and the premonition in her heart. However, with Lin Feng's calm gaze and a glance, this courage was rapidly fading. It was clearly less than a second, but Hulaina began to doubt herself. Am I wrong? He's not Yong'un? Is he really not? Then am I standing here blocking the way? I'd better get out of the way quickly. Otherwise, if I angered the big shot, I'll have to suffer. Thinking of this, Hulaina was slightly embarrassed and retreated. However, at this moment, Lin Feng suddenly grabbed her wrist. Hulaina's body trembled. What a fast speed. She didn't even have time to react before her hand was grabbed. Lin Feng looked at Hulaina and said with a smile, "When we parted in Massacre City, you wanted me to come and find you. See, I'm here today." At this moment, Hulaina was wearing the same one that Lin Feng had made with the 1000G ruler, which made Lin Feng's smile even wider. Yong'un. Hulaina's voice trembled slightly. In just a few seconds, Hulaina's emotions had risen and fallen to the extreme. At first, she was filled with anticipation, thinking that the person who had come was Yong'in, who had saved her life in Massacre City. However, as time passed, her Guesses quickly fell apart, and she was filled with worry. However, very quickly, when her mood was about to hit rock bottom, Lin Feng pulled her up and flew straight into the clouds. At this moment, Hulaina was extremely excited, and she was a bit dazed, not knowing what to say. "That's right, it's me." Lin Feng smiled, and his entire person was filled with friendliness, which made Hulaina, who was originally a bit flustered, quickly calm down. Lin Feng didn't want to talk to Hulaina in this big square. In the next second, he reached out and pulled Hulaina into his arms. Then, the tip of their feet lightly touched the ground, and the two flew out of the square, landing in front of a large hall outside. In a flash, Lin Feng hugged Hulaina and spun around, flying into the large hall. At this moment, Hulaina felt like she was in a dream. In a large hall, Lin Feng didn't immediately let go of Hulaina. Instead, he continued to hug her and sat down on a large chair. All these years, Lin Feng had almost never been close to women. The main reason was that there were very few that caught his eye, and at the same time, he wanted to pursue strength, so he didn't really care about these things. But now, his strength could be considered the #1 person in the continent, and he had reached a limit, so he could indulge himself a little. As for Ning Rongrong and Zhu Zhuqing, because they were too close, he didn't have the nerve to hug them directly, especially when the two of them were often together. If Lin Feng was nice to one of them, the other would be jealous. So until now, Lin Feng had always kept a distance from the two of them. But when it came to Hulaina, Lin Feng didn't have any burden. At this moment, there was no problem at all for him to hug her. Lin Feng could also see that Hulaina cared a lot about her identity as Yongyin. It could be seen from the fact that she was still wearing this dress these past few years. Suddenly, Lin Feng felt the person in his arms struggling slightly. Hulaina was a little shy and wanted to get out of Lin Feng's arms. At this moment, she was very excited, but it was Hulaina's first time being hugged in a sober state. She was a virgin, so it would be strange if she didn't feel shy after calming down. However, not only did Lin Feng not let go, but he also used a little more force, making it impossible for her to escape. "How have you been these years?" Lin Feng asked softly. On one hand, he spoke to ease the atmosphere at this time, and on the other hand, he wanted Hulaina to be distracted and stop struggling. In terms of effect, it was very good. Hulaina instantly stopped struggling. However, she didn't answer the question, but asked in disbelief, "Are you really Yong'an?" After looking forward to it for several years, Hulaina had always regarded Yong'an as her goal and wanted to catch up to him. Now that Lin Feng suddenly appeared, Hulaina felt that it was unreal. "Of course," Lin Feng said gently. "How can this be fake? Back then in Massacre City, you were surrounded by dozens of people, and in the end I helped you out." Hearing this, Hulaina almost believed what Lin Feng said. However, she still couldn't believe such a change in appearance. But no buts. Lin Feng directly put his hand on Hulaina's lips, making her shut up instantly. Then, Lin Feng said, "I know you have a lot of doubts in your heart right now, and there are a lot of things you want to ask me. Don't worry, I will tell you slowly." At this time, Lin Feng knew what Hulaina was worried about, and she had a lot of doubts. And what he wanted to do was to dispel Hulaina's doubts and worries, so that she wouldn't feel too much pressure in her heart. Thinking about it, Lin Feng said, "That's right, I am Lin Feng, a member of the Soul Master Alliance, and also a member of the Marvel family. Thanos is the patriarch of our family. The reason why I went to the Massacre City was because my family gave me an experience. Fortunately, that experience gave me the opportunity to get to know you." Hearing this, a smile immediately appeared on Hulaina's face. Lin Feng smiled and continued, "After we separated at that time, I established the Soul Master Alliance with Mr. Destroy, and then I have been busy with the Soul Master Alliance. At that time, the Soul Master Alliance was in a hostile relationship with the Martial Spirit Palace. I originally wanted to find an opportunity to come to the Martial Spirit Palace to see you, but there was no good opportunity until today. The Soul Master Alliance destroyed the Martial Spirit Palace, so I had the chance to come and see you." Hearing this, Hulaina was about to say something. However, Lin Feng spoke first. I know what you want to say, but I can tell you that your master Bibi Dong will be fine. The Soul Master Alliance will not kill her, and those elders and consecrators, we will not kill them. Previously, Bibi Dong led a group of Soul Masters from the Martial Spirit Palace to attack us in Heavendoe City. Although we captured many powerful titled Soul Masters at the Douluo level at that time, we have not killed them until now. We have only taken them as sparring prisoners. Now that we have wiped out the Martial Spirit Palace in one fell swoop, the final treatment may be a little different, but their lives will definitely be saved. Hearing this, Hulaina breathed a sigh of relief. Previously, although she heard that the Soul Master Alliance would not exterminate the Martial Spirit Palace, she was still very worried in her heart. After all, on the Douluo continent, especially in the Star Luo Empire, fights between Soul Master factions were generally fought to the point of extermination. But now, after hearing Lin Feng's promise, Hulaina believed that Bibi Dong and the others would be really safe. Little Na, can I call you this? Lin Feng looked into Hulaina's eyes and said. Hulaina did not dare to look at Lin Feng at all. She tilted her head and nodded gently. Yes. Hulaina was full of love for Yong'an. Although it was a little awkward to suddenly become Lin Feng, it was essentially the same. Hulaina had a good impression of Lin Feng. Little Na, what do you think of the Martial Spirit Palace? Lin Feng asked slightly seriously. Lin Feng still liked Hulaina. She had a good personality, was beautiful, and had a perfect figure. In the future, if he took her home as his wife, she would be a first-class beauty, comparable to Zhu Zhuqing. And it was precisely because of this reason that Lin Feng had to make her agree with him from the bottom of her heart and the philosophy of the Soul Master Alliance. Therefore, at this time, he was prepared to have a good talk with Hulaina and let her truly understand the Soul Master Alliance. Thinking of this, Lin Feng quickly organized the words in his heart and prepared to preach. Chapter 5:26. Martial Spirit Hall. Lin Feng's question was so sudden that Hulaina was taken aback. But soon, she nodded immediately. Of course, the elders in Martial Spirit Hall are very good to me. Master is also very good to me. I was adopted by Martial Spirit Hall since I was young. Martial Spirit Hall is like my home. Hulaina and her brother were both orphans. In their hearts, Master Bibi Dong was their mother. Martial Spirit Hall was equivalent to their own home. And their own home, no matter what it looked like, was excellent in their hearts. This idea is very good. Lin Feng nodded to show his approval. Then he continued. If I were you, I would think so too. However, I will distinguish right from wrong. If Martial Spirit Hall is good, of course I will always support it. But if they want to do something inhumane, I will oppose it. Inhumane? Hulaina immediately retorted. Martial Spirit Hall has never done such a thing. Don't be affected by the rumors of outsiders. Lin Feng had expected Hulaina's reaction. He could see that Hulaina was the kind of person who didn't know much about Martial Spirit Hall. After all, her strength was too weak. She hadn't even reached the level of Soul de Law. Even if she was Bibi Dong's apprentice, she wouldn't know the core plan of Martial Spirit Hall. So she only had a beautiful fantasy about the situation of Martial Spirit Hall. Then tell me, what good things has Martial Spirit Hall done? Lin Feng asked with interest. That's a lot. Hulaina said. Martial Spirit Hall has set up Martial Spirit branch halls in all the cities of the two empires. They also help low-level Soul Masters by giving them gold coins as subsidies. Also, Soul Master Academy is open. Soul Masters can come and study for free. And those Soul Masters who join Martial Spirit Hall, their cultivation speed has been greatly improved, and their final achievements are not low. After saying this, Hulaina stopped and looked at Lin Feng, as if waiting for Lin Feng to speak. However, Lin Feng just smiled and continued to ask, and Hulaina was taken aback, and after muttering for a few seconds, Hulaina couldn't think of anything else to say. At this moment, she was also very confused, because in Hulaina's heart, the Martial Spirit Palace was very good, but at this time, she couldn't tell how good it was, which was very ridiculous. I don't think so, Lin Feng continued. And have you realized that the so-called good of the Martial Spirit Hall is only good for themselves? Their purpose is to attract soul masters to join the Martial Spirit Hall. Other than that, they don't treat ordinary people or other soul masters well. Think about it. Isn't giving out gold coins to impress the soul masters? Were soul master academies open to attract soul masters to join the Martial Soul Hall? What's more, soul masters will become stronger after joining the Martial Spirit Hall, but in the end, won't the Martial Spirit Hall be the strongest? So in the end, what you said about Martial Spirit Palace is good is not much for others. Hearing these words, Hulaina felt a bit dumbfounded. Obviously, it was Martial Spirit Palace that had done these good deeds. Why was it that in Lin Feng's eyes, it was all for his own good? Hulaina wanted to refute, but after thinking about it carefully, Lin Feng seemed to be right. For ordinary people, Martial Spirit Palace really didn't do anything good. Everything was for the sake of Martial Spirit Palace itself. Just as she was thinking about this, Lin Feng spoke again. And let me tell you the truth, your master Bibi Dong is very ambitious. Her idea is to establish a martial spirit empire and then unify the continent. And her method of unifying is bloody suppression, slaughtering all the opposing soul master forces. If the two empires oppose, Bibi Dong will also launch a war against them, and countless people will be killed and injured because of this. But in Bibi Dong's eyes, these casualties are just a number. She doesn't care at all. According to Lin Feng's understanding of Bibi Dong, she was such a person. She was very ambitious and also very cold. And when Hulaina heard these words, her face was full of disbelief, because the person Lin Feng said was completely different from the Bibi Dong in her impression. In Hulaina's opinion, although Bibi Dong was strict, she still liked her very much. There were many soul masters in Martial Spirit Palace who supported her, and she also had a good reputation on the continent. Thinking about this, Hulaina immediately said, "Impossible. My master can't be such a person." "Why is it impossible?" Lin Feng asked calmly. If Bibi Dong had a little sense of responsibility, she would have brought people to Heaven Do City to save people. In the Soul Master Alliance's prison, there are still people from Martial Spirit Palace locked up in the Martial Spirit Palace. But in the end, did you see Bibi Dong go to save people? I'm afraid she didn't even ask around, and just treated them as if they were all dead. When Lin Feng said this, Hulaina was immediately speechless. Lin Feng was right. Although they knew that those people were in Heaven Do City and were still alive, Bibi Dong never intended to rescue them. However, Bibi Dong didn't even think about rescuing them from the start to the end. He even found many excuses to avoid this matter, saying that it was a trap set by the Soul Master Alliance. Because of the tense atmosphere at that time, no one suspected anything. But now, according to Lin Feng's words, it seemed that Bibi Dong really didn't care about those people. Also, to be honest, in the eyes of Soul Masters, the lives of ordinary people were inferior. Soul Masters were high and mighty, and should be of a higher level than ordinary people without soul power. This was the uniform view of the entire continent. Of course, there were different degrees of this view. Some Soul Masters treated ordinary people the same way as other Soul Masters, and some Soul Masters didn't care about ordinary people at all. Clearly, Bibi Dong was the latter. Because of Qian Xuanji, Bibi Dong's mentality was a little twisted, and she wanted to unify the continent to prove herself. In fact, Bibi Dong was also a pitiful person. If Qian Xuanji hadn't done such a thing to her, with Bibi Dong's talent, she could have led Martial Spirit Palace to new heights. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Things had already come to this, and it was useless to think about it. The most important thing was to correct Hulaina's thoughts. How is it? I'm right? Seeing that Hulaina didn't speak, Lin Feng asked with a smile. Hulaina nodded. You're right, but before she could finish, Lin Feng continued. I know what you want to say. You don't think your master is that kind of person. She wouldn't do such a thing. I know you won't believe me, so I have evidence here. With that, Lin Feng waved his hand, and a pile of secret letters appeared in his hand. These are the messages that the Martial Spirit Palace sent to each other. Some are from elders, some are from consecrators, and some are from Bibi Dong himself. These are all the letters that Heavendo City received in the past few years. You can see for yourself what the Martial Spirit Palace's goal is. After intercepting the channels of the Martial Spirit Palace's spies, Lin Feng let Douluo operate and collect information on the Martial Spirit Palace. At that time, he didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to know the situation of the Martial Spirit Palace. After all, knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy was a sure way to victory. Although Lin Feng was confident that he would destroy the Martial Spirit Palace in the future, it was always good to know more about them. He didn't expect that the information would be used for another purpose today. At this moment, Hulaina left Lin Feng's arms and quickly flipped through the messages. In the beginning, Hulaina thought that the Martial Spirit Palace couldn't do these things. It must be false information that Lin Feng heard. However, as she read more and more letters, she became more and more clear about the Martial Spirit Palace's plan. Moreover, these letters were all real. They were all engraved with the unique mark of the Martial Spirit Palace. It couldn't be faked. However, Hulaina didn't know anything about this. Colluding with nobles, roping in soul master forces, and so on. She had never heard of these big moves of the Martial Spirit Palace. At this moment, Hulaina realized that the Martial Spirit Palace in her mind was very different from the real Martial Spirit Palace. After a few minutes, Hulaina put down the letters in her hand in a daze. She was really shocked. She didn't know what to say at this moment. Seeing this, Lin Feng waved his hand and kept everything. At the same time, he pulled Hulaina into his arms. Don't worry about the Soul Master Alliance. The Martial Spirit Palace is now a thing of the past. The past will be written off. The Soul Master Alliance will unify the continent. Lin Feng's gentle voice echoed in Hulaina's ears. Her anxious heart calmed down. Just now, she was really worried that the Soul Master Alliance would pursue the matter. After all, the Martial Spirit Palace had done many things in secret that were detrimental to the Soul Master Alliance. In fact, until now, Hulaina didn't know what Lin Feng's position in the Soul Master Alliance was. She didn't know if he had the right to make decisions. However, as long as Lin Feng spoke, she trusted him completely. At this moment, Lin Feng continued. The most important thing is that the shortcomings of the Martial Spirit Palace that I mentioned before don't exist in our Soul Master Alliance. Our Soul Master Alliance advocates equality for everyone. Although there is no way to strictly implement this at the moment, as time passes, this idea will spread to everyone's hearts. At that time, the entire continent will become different. Also, the goal of the Soul Master Alliance is to innovate life, change all aspects of Soul Masters and ordinary people, and even promote the development of the entire continent. It's not just for ourselves. Although the Martial Spirit City has been sealed during this period of time, I'm sure you know some information about the continent. Especially those new soul tool technologies, they were all invented by the Soul Master Alliance. Hulaina was aware of what Lin Feng said. Not only her, but almost all the higher-ups of the Martial Spirit Palace knew. After all, they could get a lot of information from the Star Luo Empire. If Bibi Dong hadn't released the news that he was about to become a god, many people in the Martial Spirit City would have left for various reasons. The Soul Master Alliance, seeing that Hulaina listened to his words, Lin Feng was very gratified and immediately continued to talk about the Soul Master Alliance. In fact, Lin Feng was most afraid that Hulaina wouldn't listen to him. If that was the case, it would be very difficult for him to change her. The current situation was very good. At least it made Lin Feng feel very comfortable. Since establishing the Soul Master Alliance, Lin Feng's target was the ordinary people of the entire continent. After all, a deity position required a lot of faith power, and the number of ordinary people was much higher than Soul Masters. So, of course, the propaganda had to be based on ordinary people. Furthermore, these ideas and methods wouldn't have much of an impact on Soul Masters. It was equivalent to a win-win situation for both sides. Although these had a lot of conflicts with the Martial Spirit Palace, now that the Martial Spirit Palace had been destroyed, the conflicts naturally disappeared. Strictly speaking, the Soul Master Alliance only had conflicts with Bibi Dong. After all, most people in the martial spirit palace didn't have the ambition to dominate the continent. Half an hour later, Lin Feng and Hulaina walked out of the room. After a conversation, Lin Feng had already calmed down Hulaina's emotions. At the same time, he told her about the general situation of the Soul Master Alliance, so that she had a normal understanding of the Soul Master Alliance. After all, her previous understanding of the Soul Master Alliance was through many twists and turns, and she could even distort some things more than BB Dong. Under such circumstances, the information Hulaina received wasn't accurate. Now that she heard Lin Feng's explanation, her understanding of the Soul Master Alliance deepened. After the two of them came out, Lin Feng went straight to Ning Fengji. Hulaina requested to meet with BB Dong, so Lin Feng specially brought Hulaina over and let her into the room. After that, Lin Feng didn't delay any longer. After saying a few words to Ning Fengji, he directly left. Dai Mubai didn't follow him to Martial Spirit City, so Lin Feng had to go back to find him and officially announce the migration. This time, of course, Slayer Overlord also followed. Actually, after the previous battle, Ning Fengji and the others had already called Heavendo City and explained the situation. However, a call was ultimately a call, and it was far less grand than a live announcement. When Lin Feng and Thanos arrived at Heavendo City, the entire city cheered. There was no other reason, but the Soul Master Alliance was too popular. This was the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance, and the place where the benefits of the alliance were the strongest. This kind of welcoming scene was within Lin Feng's expectations. When he arrived at the alliance's headquarters, the celebratory atmosphere was even better. After all, everyone knew the goal of the Soul Master Alliance, which was to destroy the Martial Spirit Hall and unify the continent. Now that the Martial Spirit Hall was destroyed, the next goal was to unify the continent. This was because the people of the Soul Master Alliance were incomparably excited. When they saw Lin Feng, they all cheered. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he came to the plaza and announced loudly to everyone, "Today the Soul Master Alliance destroyed Martial Spirit City. In a few days, we will unify the continent." Lin Feng's voice resounded throughout the plaza, causing countless people to go crazy and shout, "Unify the continent." At this moment, Ning Rongrong, Dai Mubai, and the others had already arrived at the edge of the plaza. When they saw this scene, they were also excited and shouted. Next, under everyone's anticipation, Lin Feng briefly announced the future plan, causing everyone to be filled with anticipation. After more than 10 minutes, Lin Feng dismissed the excited crowd and walked towards Dai Mubai and the others. Chapter 5:27. Usually, important decisions would be announced by Tang San or Thanos directly. However, this time, Lin Feng's main body stood out. His goal was very simple. He wanted everyone to remember him. As Lin Feng had never become a god, he didn't know the exact steps to condense a godly seat and the conditions to produce the power of faith. Thanos was Lin Feng's incarnation, which meant that he was himself. If he had faith in Thanos, he would most likely have faith in Lin Feng. However, he didn't dare to gamble on whether it was as Lin Feng had guessed. Therefore, to be safe, Lin Feng decided to put himself out in the open. Weren't there many statues around the walls of Martial Spirit City? They represented a few powerful Soul Master organizations. Now that it had become the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance, the statues obviously had to be changed. Lin Feng planned to change them into statues of the powerful titled Douluo when the Soul Master Alliance was first established. Apart from that, Lin Feng would also erect statues of the members of the Soul Master Alliance's first committee in the plaza below the Martial Soul Mountain. At the same time, Lin Feng wanted to move the Douluo Hall on the Martial Soul Mountain down. He wanted to build a new Alliance Sacred Hall at the top of the mountain to specially erect the statues of those who had a great impact on the continent. As for Lin Feng himself, it obviously had to be on top. Lin Feng wanted to turn the Alliance Sacred Hall into the noblest place on the continent. It had to be even more impressive than the Douluo Hall of the past. He wanted to deify this place. With the popularization of telephones across the continent, news would spread much faster than before. When that happened, Their names and deeds would spread across the entire continent. As he thought about this, Lin Feng walked towards Dai Mubai and the others. Thanos didn't follow him. Instead, he went to organize the powerhouses who were still in the city to prepare for the relocation. Feng Ge, you were so impressive just now. As soon as he approached, Ma Hongjun couldn't wait to flatter him. Oscar did not want to be outdone. He said, "Do I need you to tell me that? Who doesn't know of Feng Ge's prestige?" Although Lin Feng knew that the two of them were flattering him, he still liked to hear it. Lin Feng flipped his hand and tossed 2 spirit fruits to Oscar and Ma Hongjun. These two fellows know how to talk. Reward. Feng Ge is mighty and domineering. Ma Hongjun took it with a grin. Feng Ge is so cool. Oscar was also smiling. Seeing this, Ning Rongrong also said, Feng Ge is so cool, handsome, and generous. I want one too. Even Zhu Zhuqing opened his mouth and said with a trembling voice, Feng Ge, I want one too. Hearing these words, Lin Feng was very happy. He laughed and said, Good, good, good. Everyone will have one. Lin Feng took out a few more spirit fruits and gave one to everyone. At this moment, Grandmaster Flanders and Zhao Wuji came over and congratulated Lin Feng. Today, the Soul Master Alliance destroyed the Martial Spirit Hall. Congratulations to the Alliance. Congratulations to the Alliance. Lin Feng replied. Today, they destroyed the Martial Spirit Hall and were about to attack the Star Luo Empire. It wouldn't be long before they could unify the continent. Today, they should celebrate. Originally, they should hold a big banquet to celebrate, but the current conditions didn't allow it. They should wait until the day the continent was completely unified. They should celebrate in Martial Spirit City. Alright, they should officially take over the Heaven Do Empire. Otherwise, it would be better if Shui Yi ruled it all the time. Shui Qinghe was a smart person. Furthermore, he had joined the Soul Master Alliance. When the time came, he, Ning Fengji, and Ning Rongrong would be in charge of this side. As for the south, Zhu Zhuqing and Dai Mubai would be in charge. As long as the general direction didn't change and the Soul Master Alliance was strong enough, it wouldn't be a problem to implement a federal system. After all, the Soul Master Alliance would control the entire continent's culture, economy, and strength. Those schools and teaching materials were all set up by Lin Feng. He had been playing a big game for a long time. Soon, he would be able to see the results. In this way, the core of the continent would be controlled by the Soul Master Alliance. The other factions wouldn't be able to resist at all. Rongrong, your father will come to Heaven Do City soon. When the time comes, you will assist him in moving the headquarters, Lin Feng said with a smile. Yes, I will assist. Ning Rongrong nodded. Ever since returning from the Sea God's Island, Ning Rongrong had come into contact with many of the Soul Master Alliance's operations. Now, she had become a qualified manager. Grandmaster, there's no need to move the laboratory. It's difficult to set up the production line in Martial Spirit City quickly. So, let's leave it here for now. When everything is done in Martial Spirit City, you can come over. Okay. Grandmaster and Oscar nodded. Also, Lin Feng said a few more words. Then he suddenly looked to the right. Shui Qinghe had come over. Not only him, but Emperor Shui Yi had also come over. Beside them were Tai Ye and Ming Lang, the 2 imperial titled Douluo. Lin Feng scanned them with his spiritual power. He had a rough idea of their purpose. They were probably here to negotiate. However, Lin Feng was wrong. Emperor Shui Yi had taken out the Empire's seal. The Empire seal was similar to the Imperial Jade seal. It had the same effect as the Emperor's scepter. Right now, Shui Yi was holding the Empire's seal in his left hand and the Emperor's scepter in his right. Accompanied by the 2 titled Douluo and Shui Qinghe, he walked towards Thanos with a serious expression. He didn't walk quickly. After half a minute, he arrived in front of Thanos. There were already many people around them. They were all curious about what Shui Yi wanted to do. Ning Rongrong was also confused. Feng Ge, what are you doing? Why is His Majesty walking towards Mr. Destroy? He wants to surrender, Lin Feng said calmly. Surrender? Really? Everyone was confused. They didn't know why. As if to answer their doubts, Shui Yi spoke. He raised the Empire's seal and scepter high. Shui, Emperor of the Heaven Do Empire, I surrender to the Soul Master Alliance. I hope to bring peace to the continent. And his voice wasn't soft. Everyone in the square heard him. Some were surprised, some expressed understanding, and some expressed pity. Fengge, why is His Majesty surrendering all of a sudden? Ma Hongjun asked. We destroyed the Soul Master Alliance in less than half a day. Do you think he's afraid of becoming the next Martial Spirit Palace? Lin Feng said calmly. The Martial Spirit Palace was the most powerful force on the continent. They had more than 10 title de law. They also had 1,000 Daos Lu and Bibi Dong, 2 super strong people. Such a force couldn't even last half a day in front of the Soul Master Alliance. This meant that the Soul Master Alliance could easily destroy any force on the continent of Douluo. Because of this, Shui knew what would happen to him in the future. To prevent something bad from happening, surrendering now was more dignified. At least it would leave an impression of him as someone who loved his people. After all, Shui surrendered to avoid a war. If this wasn't him cherishing his soldiers' lives, what was it? So that's how it is. Ma Hongjun was enlightened. At this time, the Snow Knight Emperor also finished his words of surrender. For a time, everyone in the square held their breath, waiting for Thanos to speak. Especially Shui. It took a lot of courage for him to say these words. After all, as a ruler, it was too embarrassing for him to surrender to a force from his own empire in front of everyone. Shui was very nervous now. He was waiting for Thanos' reaction. After about 3 seconds of silence, Thanos finally spoke. The Soul Master Alliance accepts your surrender. Oh, the moment he said that, the members of the Soul Master Alliance in the square burst into cheers. They were all from the Heaven Do Empire. At the same time, they were also members of the Soul Master Alliance. If the Soul Master Alliance was just an ordinary force, they wouldn't be so happy. In their hearts, being a citizen of the Heaven Do Empire was more important. However, this was the Soul Master Alliance. It was an extremely special force. As long as you joined, you would be able to experience the benefits. Furthermore, everyone in Heaven Do City could clearly feel the changes in the city. Before the Soul Master Alliance was formed, Heaven Do City was very prosperous. However, this prosperity felt very ordinary and normal. After the Soul Master Alliance was formed, the entire Heaven Do City changed. Not only were there many new things, but there was also a subtle change that made everyone feel more at ease. This change was a little unclear. However, as long as you experienced it yourself, you would realize that the difference between the two was too great. This was why everyone cheered when the Soul Master Alliance forced the Heaven Do Empire to surrender. After a few seconds of cheering, Thanos said, "From today onwards, the Heaven Do Empire will be reduced to the Heaven Do Kingdom. Military power will be handed over to the Soul Master Alliance. You will only have the Royal Guards." Soul Masters, Thanos recited the arrangements for the Heaven Do Empire for a full minute. Generally speaking, the Heaven Do Empire was weakened. Right now, the royal family's power was only a figurehead. The Soul Master Alliance would take over most of the Empire's power. Lin Feng had already thought of these words. Originally, he wanted to take over the Star Luo Empire before coming back to beat up Shui. He didn't expect Shui to surrender so quickly. In the end, Thanos spent about 5 minutes laying down many rules for Shui. He told him to go back and take a good look. He would transfer power to Ning Fengji the next day. Shui had also prepared many things in advance. Apart from the seal and scepter, there were also military documents, reports on the Empire's territories, and other things. After casually flipping through them, Thanos put them away. He wasn't very interested in these things. When the time came, he would just show them to Ning Fengji. Speaking of which, Ning Fengji was really a sucker. He saw that the Heaven Do Empire had spent a lot of money to raise the million-strong army. Most of the military expenses were deducted from the 7 treasures glazed sex taxes. It could be said that Ning Fengji was helping the Heaven Do Empire raise this army. On the other hand, the 7 treasures glazed sect was really profitable. The taxes they collected every year were enough to raise a million-strong army. It was no wonder they were the richest soul master organization on the continent. The Heaven-Do Empire's surrender was only a small interlude to Lin Feng. Very soon, he spoke to Dai Mubai. Mubai, now that Martial Soul City has been conquered and the Heaven-Do Empire has surrendered, bring me to the Star Luo Empire's royal family. Dai Mubai nodded and said, yes. Let's go now. The Star Luo Empire is more martial than the Heaven-Do Empire. As long as I announce the Soul Master Alliance's achievements, I don't think anyone will object. The Star Luo Empire loved to fight, and their army was very strong. If not for the Martial Soul Hall's interference, the Heaven-Do Empire might have been destroyed by them. However, even though they were belligerent, they were not stupid. In the face of absolute strength, they would also submit. Feng Ge, I'll go with you, Zhu Zhuqing suddenly said. Seeing this, Ning Rongrong hurriedly said, Feng Ge, I want to go too. She didn't have to go. It was just that Zhu Zhuqing would be alone with Lin Feng, and she felt threatened. Lin Feng said helplessly, Take Shi is useful in the Star Luo Empire. As for Rongrong, didn't I tell you earlier that your father will return to Heaven-Do City tonight? You still have to help him move the alliance tomorrow. Oh, then I won't go. Hearing this, Ning Rongrong nodded helplessly. Lin Feng looked at the Grandmaster and Oscar. If the laboratory needs any support, just let us know. The Soul Master Alliance will fully support your research. The laboratory was able to come up with new soul tool technology and all kinds of new things. The main reason was because of the Grandmaster and Oscar's talent. However, there was a saying that a clever housewife couldn't cook without rice. Without the Soul Master Alliance's full support, they wouldn't have been able to achieve their current results. The two complemented each other. The Grandmaster and the Soul Master Alliance gained fame and technology, and the Soul Master Alliance also gained great influence. We already have a lot of support. We don't need too much for now, the Grandmaster hurriedly said. Speaking of which, they hadn't come up with anything new for more than half a month. The Soul Master Alliance kept sending supplies to the laboratory, which made the Grandmaster and Oscar a little embarrassed. Don't worry about the materials. The Soul Master Alliance can easily provide them. After laughing, Lin Feng turned serious and said, Grandmaster, little AO, if the two of you are free, you can compile your own soul tool skills into teaching materials. That way, the two of you can teach even more students. Yes, both of them nodded immediately. Creating teaching materials meant that they would be passed down through the ages. To the Grandmaster and Oscar, this was a great temptation. With Lin Feng's God creation plan, Oscar might be the person with the third most faith power after Lin Feng and himself. All right, I've said what I needed to say. Mubai, take Shi, let's go. After that, under the leadership of Thanos, they quickly flew to the south. Chapter 528. Heaven-Do City was quite far from Star Luo City. One was in the north of the continent, while the other was in the south. If an ordinary person were to ride a carriage, it would probably take a month. However, with Thanos' current speed, it would only take an hour. They didn't land in Martial Soul City midway. Instead, they continued to fly south to Star Luo City, the capital of the Star Luo Empire. Lin Feng's impression of Star Luo City was that it was boorish. The decorations, food, and architectural style were all very bold and unrestrained. However, the noodles in Star Luo City were more authentic than those in Soto City. It was very satisfying to eat. Of course, they weren't here to sightsee. They were here to conquer the Star Luo Empire. After entering Star Luo City, Dai Mubai immediately led everyone to the palace. The Star Luo Empire's palace was a little different from the Heaven-Do Empire's. It was bigger, and the decorations were very bold and unrestrained. Along the way, they chatted and laughed. Dai Mubai introduced the palace to Lin Feng. At the same time, the two of them talked about the Empire's future development plans. However, when they arrived at the entrance of the Imperial Palace, they were stopped by someone. The palace is an important place. Entry is prohibited. The person who spoke was a Soul Emperor. Other than him, there were 3 other Soul Emperors. The 4 of them were standing guard here. Seeing this, Lin Feng looked at Dai Mubai. There was a hint of confusion in his eyes. He seemed to be asking, Little brother, what's wrong with you? On Dai Mubai's side, he was also dumbfounded. Logically speaking, the guards in the palace should recognize him. Dai Mubai had only returned once 3 months ago. How could they not recognize him all of a sudden? Furthermore, when they came in from the outside, the guards recognized him. Why didn't anything happen? While he was confused, Dai Mubai looked at the 4 people in front of him carefully. He suddenly realized that they were a little unfamiliar. Although he didn't know all the guards in the palace, he should have some impression of them. However, Dai Mubai felt that the 4 people in front of him were very unfamiliar. He should have never seen them before. And these were 4 soul emperors. It didn't feel right to have 4 soul emperors as guards for the imperial palace. It was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. With that in mind, Dai Mubai immediately asked, "Who are you?" What was his identity? Why is he in the imperial palace? Zhu Zhuqing's eyes narrowed as well. She could feel the difference between the 4 of them. They didn't have the unique aura of a soul master from the Star Luo Empire. Instead, they gave off the feeling of a soul master from the Spear Hall. "Oh," the soul emperor said in a strange voice. "Oh, you guys have guts. This is the Star Luo Empire's imperial palace. You guys are sneaking around, and you dare to question us, especially the one wearing a mask and white clothes. Don't think that you're Thanos just because you're dressed like him." They were the soul masters of the Martial Spirit Palace. They had been sent to the Star Luo Empire by Bibi Dong and the others to gather their strength and prepare a backup plan. Recently, they had even come to the Imperial Palace to work with other Soul Master factions and nobles to pressure the Star Luo Empire's imperial family. They wanted them to prepare for war at any time. Martial Spirit City had been destroyed too quickly, and Lin Feng hadn't let the news spread. Furthermore, the Star Luo Empire didn't have a phone, so no one knew that the Martial Spirit Palace had been destroyed. So when they saw Lin Feng and the others, especially when they saw Thanos, they thought that they were imposters. After all, Thanos was too famous, and there were many people who dressed up as Thanos. Lin Feng and the others were also very good at controlling their soul force. They didn't leak any of their soul force, so others didn't notice anything strange about them. "So noisy," Dai Mubai cursed when he saw this person speaking in a strange tone. He suddenly punched out. Bang! Following a muffled sound, the person who spoke was sent flying more than 10 meters away. He fell to the ground and didn't make a sound. Dai Mubai didn't kill him, but he was severely injured and fainted. The remaining 3 people were shocked when they saw this. The person who was sent flying was a Soul Emperor, and an agility type 1 at that. He was extremely fast. Even if it was an attack from a Soul Sage, he should be able to react easily. However, no one saw how Dai Mubai attacked just now. That person didn't even have a chance to react before he was sent flying. Furthermore, Dai Mubai didn't use any soul skills. He didn't even summon his martial soul. He was able to reach such a standard with just his physical strength. It was also because of this that the 3 of them realized how strong Dai Mubai was. Who are you?" one of them asked with a trembling voice. At the same time, he summoned his martial soul. The other 2 did the same. Evidently, Dai Mubai's gentle punch had given them a lot of pressure. Dai Mubai, Crown Prince of the Star Luo Empire. Dai Mubai asked, "Who are you? Why are you in the palace?" At this moment, Dai Mubai desperately wanted to know why these people were in the Star Luo Empire's palace. "Crown Prince." The 3 of them looked at each other and saw fear in each other's eyes. This was because they knew that the Crown Prince of the Star Luo Empire, Dai Mubai, had studied at the Shrek Academy. He had also recently joined the Soul Master Alliance. Now that Dai Mubai was back, did that mean that the masked person beside him was really Thanos? As they thought of this, they didn't dare to move at all. They were so scared that they were rooted to the ground. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Thanos was too strong. He was so strong that the Soul Masters from the Martial Soul Hall felt despair. "What? If you don't speak, do you want to eat my fist?" Dai Mubai threatened. In the Star Luo Empire, this was his home turf, and as the host, Dai Mubai naturally had to resolve these issues. However, the 3 of them weren't cooperating right now. This made him feel a little awkward. Therefore, Dai Mubai was a little angry. However, The three of them were almost scared out of their wits. They looked at Thanos with fear in their eyes. Just as Dai Mubai was about to teach the three of them a lesson, an angry roar came from the palace. Who dares to be so presumptuous in the palace? As soon as the voice finished speaking, a middle-aged man flew out from the palace. Lin Feng looked at him and realized that he was a titled Douluo. Dai Mubai was also confused. He didn't know this person. Since when did the Star Luo Empire have a titled Douluo? Just as they were thinking about this, they realized that this man's clothes had the insignia of an elder of the Martial Soul Hall on them. Is this a hidden elder of the Martial Soul Hall? People had thought that there were only a few titled Douluo in the Martial Soul Hall. But in fact, there were more than 20 titled Douluo in the Martial Soul Hall. Most of them were hidden. Therefore, as soon as they saw this man, they immediately realized that he must be one of the titled Douluo that the Martial Soul Hall had been hiding. That was indeed the case. His titled Douluo was the Star Fox. His martial soul was also the Star Fox, a mutant martial soul. Bibi Dong had sent him to the Star Luo Empire to take charge of the situation. He had already taken control of the Star Luo Empire's royal family. Even the palace was guarded by the Martial Soul Hall. That was why Dai Mubai and the others had run into this when they came back. Very good. The people of Martial Spirit Palace have occupied the Imperial Palace openly. That's great. Dai Mubai was so angry that he laughed after he figured out what had happened. The Martial Soul Hall had a strong control over the Star Luo Empire, but they had always done so under the surface. Dai Mubai knew that, but he didn't know the details. But at the moment, the Martial Soul Hall had taken over the palace after only 3 months. How dare they? With that in mind, Dai Mubai attached his martial soul to his body and activated the White Tiger's Vajra transformation. Then, he jumped up and threw a punch at Star Fox Douluo. You're overestimating yourself. Star Fox Douluo sneered and threw a punch of his own. Dai Mubai was already very good at controlling his soul power. Even when he was attacking with all his might, he could still control the fluctuations of his soul power within an inch of space. Therefore, in Star Fox's eyes, Dai Mubai was an idiot who didn't know his own limits. However, Star Fox Douluo's expression changed when the two fists collided. How is this possible? How can he be so strong at such a young age? Star Fox realized that the strength of Dai Mubai's punch was comparable to his own. In fact, Dai Mubai's punch was even stronger. He was a titled Douluo. Although he wasn't an assault-type soul master, even Soul Douluo wouldn't be able to resist his punch. Dai Mubai didn't use any soul skills, but he was able to counter his punch. Bam! Star Fox Douluo was sent flying into the sky when their fists collided, while Dai Mubai landed on the ground. In fact, Dai Mubai was very confident of defeating Star Fox if he used all his strength. However, this was the palace. Dai Mubai didn't want to destroy the surrounding buildings and environment, so he didn't want to use his martial soul true body. Therefore, he was at a disadvantage. However, Dai Mubai wasn't stupid. He wasn't alone. Take Shi, I'll attract his attention. You sneak up on him and capture him. Dai Mubai quickly transmitted his voice to Zhu Zhuqing. After he finished speaking, Dai Mubai didn't wait for Zhu Zhuqing's reply. He leaped up and attacked Star Fox again. Zhu Zhuqing, on the other hand, smiled. Her body turned into a shadow and merged with the ground. At this moment, Dai Mubai and Star Fox Douluo started to fight again. However, Zhu Zhuqing appeared behind Star Fox 3 seconds later. At this moment, there was no need for words. Dai Mubai roared and clenched his fists. Invisible palms appeared and trapped Star Fox Douluo for a moment. Seizing this opportunity, Zhu Zhuqing's shadow attack landed on Star Fox's body. Star Fox wanted to dodge or release his martial soul true body to resist. However, everything was too slow. Zhu Zhuqing was as fast as a ghost. Together with Dai Mubai's perfect coordination, Star Fox didn't have a chance to react and was instantly injured. Dai Mubai followed up with another attack. According to the method that Lin Feng taught him, he directly used his soul power to invade Star Fox's body and subdue him. Of course, Dai Mubai's method was very limited. He had to capture someone personally to use it. Furthermore, The other party had to not resist. Dai Mubai took advantage of the fact that Star Fox was injured and his soul power was in chaos to subdue him instantly. The restrictions that Lin Feng had placed on BB Dong and Thousand Dao Flow were too difficult. Other than Lin Feng, no one else knew how to do it. In almost an instant, Star Fox Douluo from the Martial Soul Hall was captured alive. Seeing this scene, the three Soul Emperors below were scared silly. They stood where they were in a daze and didn't know what to do. However, no one cared about them. Dai Mubai directly placed Star Fox in front of Lin Feng. Speak. What's the situation in the palace? What has the Martial Soul Hall been doing recently? Dai Mubai shouted. To be honest, Star Fox was very confused right now. He didn't know what was going on. How was he captured alive so quickly? However, when he saw Thanos, he could roughly guess the current situation. It was likely that the Soul Master Alliance was preparing to attack the Martial Soul Hall. At this moment, Thanos was bringing people to the Star Luo Empire to gather information. As for the Martial Soul Hall being destroyed, Star Fox Douluo had never thought of this before. Hence, he replied firmly, "You want me to betray the Martial Soul Hall? No way. If you want to kill me, do whatever you want." BB Dong was willing to hand over the management of the Star Luo Empire to Star Fox, not only because he was a titled Douluo, but also because he was very loyal. However, in the next second, Dai Mubai said something that Star Fox couldn't believe. The Martial Soul Hall has already been destroyed. Why are you still talking about it? Hurry up and give us an explanation. This way, you can enjoy better treatment as a captive. Star Fox didn't hear the rest of Dai Mubai's words. He only cared about the first sentence. What? The Martial Soul Hall has been destroyed. That's impossible. Star Fox sneered. How can the Martial Soul Hall be destroyed? Don't try to trick me with such a clumsy trick. The Martial Soul Hall's arrangements in the Star Luo Empire were very important. BB Dong planned to make the Star Luo Empire a second headquarters for the Martial Soul Hall. Therefore, this news was very important. Star Fox wouldn't tell anyone else. Seeing that Star Fox didn't believe him, Dai Mubai looked at Lin Feng. "Feng go, let him take a look." Lin Feng nodded. He waved his hand and took out the scepter that represented his identity as the Pope. This thing could be said to be BB Dong's symbol. It couldn't be given to anyone else. When Star Fox saw it, his first thought was that this was a fake. However, he soon recognized that this couldn't be a fake. The soul power fluctuations on the scepter were definitely authentic. If this was a fake, then it must be a replica of the real thing. No matter which possibility it was, the appearance of the Pope's scepter could only mean one thing. Something had happened to BB Dong. How is this possible? How could the Soul Master Alliance destroy it with two titled Douluo at the pinnacle of rank 99? Star Fox glanced at Thanos. His heart was full of disbelief. After hearing this, Dai Mubai and the others were delighted. This elder seemed to be an important person. He should know a lot about the Martial Soul Hall in the Star Luo Empire. As long as they could pry open his mouth, taking over the Star Luo Empire would be very easy. Chapter 529. In the end, Dai Mubai managed to get what he wanted from Star Fox. After all, the Martial Spirit Hall had been destroyed, and the Pope, worshippers, and elders had all been captured. Star Fox's loyal target no longer existed. Then his so-called betrayal wouldn't be valid anymore. Lin Feng only gave Star Fox a little bit of hope when his beliefs had collapsed, and he told him everything. After hearing Star Fox's description, Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing were very surprised. The Martial Spirit Hall had too much control over the Star Luo Empire. Most of the nobles in the Empire were from the Martial Spirit Hall, and almost two-thirds of the Soul Master forces were controlled by the Martial Spirit Hall. In particular, the four lower sects of the seven great sects all followed the Martial Spirit Hall's lead. If Lin Feng hadn't come to the Star Luo Empire today, Star Fox would have gathered his forces to attack the Soul Master Alliance when news of the Martial Spirit Hall's destruction reached them a day or two later. Although Lin Feng wasn't afraid of this, it was still troublesome. Now that he knew the situation, he could deal with it easily. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry to deal with this. His main goal today was to take over the Star Luo Empire. Just like that, The group quickly ran through the palace and captured all the people from the martial spirit hall. After that, Thanos watched over Star Fox and these people, while Lin Feng followed Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing to the main hall. At this moment, the main members of the Star Luo Empire's royal family were all here. Some ministers and nobles were also gathered. Among these people, there should be people from the martial spirit hall, but Lin Feng didn't care. This wasn't the main point today. Father, this is Lin Feng, an elder of the Soul Master Alliance. At the same time, he's the deacon of the Marvel family. He's the one who purged the palace just now. Dai Mubai said to an old man on the throne. The emperor of the Star Luo Empire was relatively old. He looked to be in his 60s, and he wasn't very powerful. He was only a sole emperor. This should be his upper limit. If nothing went wrong, he would stop here for the rest of his life. Thank you, Deacon Lin Feng. The old emperor immediately expressed his gratitude to Lin Feng. There was a small detail here. He called Lin Feng deacon, not elder, because in the eyes of the people of the Star Luo Empire, the Marvel family's influence was greater than the Soul Master Alliance. After all, Thanos had defeated the entire empire, and everyone in the Star Luo Empire couldn't breathe under the pressure of that power. Under such circumstances, they were more concerned about Lin Feng's deacon of the Marvel family's deacon. No need for pleasantries. Let's get to the point, Lin Feng said with a smile. Lin Feng lends Lin Feng's to the Star Luo families, to the Star Luo, to the empires, was to these people to the Star Luo after hearing Lin Feng's words. The smile on the old emperor's face faded. However, he soon sighed and said, the Star Luo Empire can surrender, but there are conditions. Dai Mubai had told him that the Soul Master Alliance had the ambition to unify the world, and that they were very strong. The old emperor was already mentally prepared. Furthermore, the Soul Master Alliance had destroyed the Martial Soul Hall in half a day. They couldn't resist such strength, so they had no choice but to surrender. There was also another point. Dai Mubai and Lin Feng's relationship was clearly discussed. Because of Dai Mubai's talent, many officials and nobles supported him. Although Dai Mubai was only the crown prince, his words were more effective than the old emperor's. Therefore, the old emperor couldn't object anymore. He could only hope to fight for more benefits for himself. Tell me, as long as it's not too much, I can agree to it for Mubai's sake. The Snowy Knight Emperor in the Heaven Do Empire surrendered. Lin Feng gave him a lot of face and made him the vice minister of the Soul Master Alliance in Heaven Do City. As for the minister, it was naturally Xueqinghe. At the same time, Lin Feng didn't take over the Heaven Do Imperial Palace. He let them keep it. As for the Star Luo Empire, if they surrendered without any hesitation, then Lin Feng wouldn't make things too difficult for them. Hearing this, the old emperor smiled. I hope Deacon Lin can let the Star Luo Empire's royal family and nobles keep their current fiefdoms. Fiefdoms were territories. The higher one's rank, the bigger the fiefdom. Furthermore, the nobles had a lot of power in their fiefdoms. It was almost equivalent to a small country. Lin Feng wouldn't allow something like this. The Soul Master Alliance wanted a complete revolution. All the fiefdoms had to be returned to the country. Otherwise, as long as the fiefdoms were privately owned, it would be easy for something to happen. Perhaps because the Soul Master Alliance was very strong, nothing would happen for hundreds or thousands of years. However, as time passed, the entire continent would fall into chaos as territories were annexed. Although these matters were far away from Lin Feng, and he didn't even need to care about them, this was his bottom line. He couldn't cross it. Thus, Lin Feng shook his head. All fiefdoms must be returned to the country. Furthermore, the original titles will be invalid. If the Soul Master Alliance lacked talents, he wouldn't remove the Star Luo Empire's officials. However, he didn't lack them. Whether it was the Soul Master Alliance or Dai Mubai, he had people he could use. Thus, he didn't need to care about these officials. As for those who didn't want to accept it, if they didn't want to accept it, they could come and find him. He believed that his fist would tell them what was right. The old emperor was at a loss for words. Beside him, some of the officials and nobles were in an uproar. Someone immediately said, Deacon Lin, we nobles are hereditary. Our fiefdoms are private property. It's not very appropriate to take them away. Most nobles in a country, especially those who had fiefdoms, were the local tyrants. Although they weren't the strongest, their influence was still very terrifying. If they worked together, even the emperor of a country would have a headache. This was especially so for Zhu Zhuqing's Zhu family. It was a super family in the Star Luo Empire, and they had a lot of fiefdoms. There were also people from a Zhu family present. If Lin Feng wanted to take their fiefdoms, it was equivalent to scraping off a layer of skin from these nobles. This touched on their core interests. The Zhu family will be the first to disagree. The person who spoke was Zhu Zhuqing's uncle. He thought that his words would have some effect because of his relationship with Zhu Zhuqing. However, he was wrong, and very wrong. Lin Feng's soul power trembled slightly, and Zhu Zhuqing's uncle was sent flying. He spat out blood in the air, and by the time he landed on the ground, he was already severely injured. At the same time, Lin Feng's calm voice rang out. "You don't seem to understand the situation. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to accept your surrender." His voice wasn't loud, but coupled with the scene of Zhu Zhuqing's uncle being sent flying, the noisy crowd instantly quieted down. They also suddenly realized that the person standing in front of them was a powerhouse from the Marvel family and a super ruthless person who had just destroyed the Martial Spear Hall not long ago. Although Lin Feng's tone was very calm, everyone could feel the chill in it. Everyone also realized that even if the Zhu family's people were sent flying, Zhu Zhuqing's expression didn't change at all. Like Dai Mubai, he didn't have a good impression of the family. After all, the atmosphere was too cruel. Although he stayed at home for the past 3 years, he didn't get too close to these elders. Therefore, at this time, Zhu Zhuqing didn't care about Lin Feng's actions at all. However, Lin Feng didn't hit too hard. Although Zhu Zhuqing's uncle was sent flying, he was only slightly injured at most. At this moment, everyone looked at Lin Feng with fear in their eyes. He couldn't be bothered to talk to the emperor anymore. He took out a piece of paper from his soul tool and threw it over. These are the basic regulations. Mubai already knows the details. When the time comes, he will be the division head of the Star Luo Empire's branch. He'll have the final say on whether you stay or leave. Apart from that, the Soul Master Alliance will send people over to report on the Star Luo Empire situation. While Lin Feng was speaking, the old emperor had already picked up the piece of paper and started reading. There wasn't much written on it. It was just a demotion of the empire. At the same time, all the land would be taken back, and the kingdoms would be reduced to provinces. More accurately speaking, the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire were reduced to prefectures instead of countries. The kingdoms and duchies that belonged to the northern and southern prefectures were reduced to provinces. In the end, there was only one country left, and that was a new country established by the Soul Master Alliance. As for the country's name, it hadn't been decided yet. However, it should be inscribed by Thanos in the end. According to Lin Feng's thoughts, the country's name should be Xia. The Great Xia Empire sounded pretty good. As he thought about this, the emperor, the nobles, and the ministers finished reading the basic regulations on the page. This wasn't skinning them, it was killing them. However, after seeing Lin Feng's anger, they didn't dare to refute him. The emperor sighed and said, "Since that's the case, we have no choice. We can only agree." After hearing this, Lin Feng smiled and said, "Don't worry, we won't touch the palace. We won't pursue your personal property either." The currency in the Star Luo Empire was still gold soul coins. Lin Feng didn't care at all, because it wouldn't be long before they were all converted into contribution points. When that happened, these people would take the initiative to hand over their resources and money. After hearing this, the nobles heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't kill them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to survive. "All right, Mubai. Since we've come to an agreement, I won't stay here any longer. I'll go back first. The people from the Alliance will come over tomorrow." After achieving his goal, Lin Feng naturally had to leave. After all, he still had many things to do in Martial Spirit City. "Okay, I'll take care of things here." Dai Mubai nodded. At present, Dai Mubai's strength had reached the level of Douluo. He didn't have to worry about anything in the Star Luo Empire. Zhu Zhuqing clearly didn't plan to stay. He said directly, Fengge, I'll go back with you. This. Okay. Lin Feng hesitated for a moment before replying. He was preparing to go to Martial Spirit City. Hulaina was there. Now that Zhu Zhuqing was there, it was inevitable that they would bump into each other. Originally, Lin Feng was still hesitating. However, he soon realized that they would meet sooner or later anyway. It was fine to bring it forward. Moreover, there was only Zhu Zhuqing at the moment. Otherwise, if Ning Rongrong was there, Lin Feng might be held captive by the two of them. What's wrong? Zhu Zhuqing asked. She noticed that Lin Feng hesitated for a while because she wanted to go with him. Therefore, Zhu Zhuqing felt that something was wrong. If Lin Feng knew what Zhu Zhuqing was thinking, he would be very surprised. This woman's sixth sense was too accurate. Nothing. Let's go. Lin Feng shook his head. Just like that, Lin Feng flew towards Martial Spirit City with Zhu Zhuqing. Behind them, Thanos carried Xing Hu and some soul masters from the Martial Spirit Palace. About half an hour later, they arrived at Martial Spirit City. Without stopping, they went straight to the Pontiff's Palace on Martial Spirit Mountain. It was the temporary conference room of the Soul Master Alliance. Ning Fengji, Tang San, and the others were having a meeting. The content of the meeting was very simple. It was about how to plan Martial Spirit City. Ning Fengji would return to Heavendo City tomorrow to organize the migration. As for Golden Hoop, Douluo would bring people to the Star Luo Empire to officially take over the Star Luo Empire. At the same time, Ning Fengji would start to spread the news to the entire continent. After all, establishing a nation was too big. If it was suddenly established, it would be too sudden and the impact would not be very good. Lin Feng planned to publicize for a month first. He would take the opportunity to transform Martial Spirit City into the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance. After everything was ready, the nation would be established. As for the administrative level of the nation, Lin Feng would not change it. He would just apply it to the Soul Master Alliance. In any case, Lin Feng did not find any major flaws in the Soul Master Alliance in the past few years. Right? Other than establishing a nation, the law also needed to be overhauled, whether it was Heavendo or the Star Luo Empire. The laws of these two empires were very loose. There was not even a written code. Since Lin Feng wanted to establish a good nation, especially when it concerned how much faith he had, it was necessary to establish a written code. This matter was not simple. Lin Feng had to use a lot of brain cells recently. However, he did not create a code out of thin air. The laws of Heavendo and the Star Luo Empire still had many redeeming qualities. Lin Feng combined the two and then modified it according to the current situation. He added some laws from his previous life. Finally, a written code would be formed. As he was thinking about this, Lin Feng and the others arrived at the hall. Fengge, you're back. How was it? Are there any problems in the Star Luo Empire? Tang San immediately greeted him with a smile. With Fengge and Mr. Destroy involved, of course there's no problem, Zhu Zhuqing said from the side. That's true. I was thinking too much. Tang San rubbed his head and said. At this moment, Ning Fengji saw the few Martial Spirit Hall Soul Masters behind Thanos. He was slightly puzzled. They were caught by the Star Luo Empire. They're from the Martial Spirit Hall, Lin Feng replied. Chapter 530. After about 10 minutes, Lin Feng explained the current situation of the Heavendo Empire and the Star Luo Empire. At this moment, the Soul Masters from the Martial Soul Hall who were brought back from the Star Fox Empire had already been escorted away. Only Lin Feng, Ning Fengji, and a few other important figures were left in the hall. Since the Star Luo Empire has surrendered, does that mean the Soul Master Alliance has unified the entire continent? Ning Fengji said in a daze. This morning, the continent was still divided into 3 factions. In the morning, the Soul Master Alliance destroyed the Martial Soul Hall. In the afternoon, Thanos returned, and the Heavendo Empire surrendered. In the afternoon, Lin Feng and the others went to the Star Luo Empire, and the Star Luo Empire also surrendered. In just one day, the Soul Master Alliance had unified the entire continent. This sounded too magical. Even Ning Fengji who was used to seeing big waves, felt that it was ridiculous. Fenggu is really strong. Everything is going according to plan. Tang San praised. Previously, Lin Feng had told Tang San that as long as the opportunity was right, they would be able to unify the entire continent in one day. At that time, Tang San felt that it was very difficult and the chances of it happening were not high. But now it really happened. It was too shocking. The plan has just begun. Lin Feng laughed. Unifying the continent doesn't mean that the surrender of the two empires is a success. We still have a lot to do. The Soul Master Alliance's ability to mobilize people has to be fully unleashed. We can't manage everything by ourselves. We have to mobilize the strength of all the Soul Masters and then use their strength to change the entire continent. The direction of change is to release missions and use contribution points to mobilize everyone's enthusiasm. Then we will guide them to discover the benefits and then benefit the country and the people. As the saying went, the world was bustling for benefits. The current unity of the Soul Master Alliance was caused by benefits. Of course, these benefits were not just money. They were a combination of fame, status, strength, and a series of other factors. It was because of this that the various powers of the Soul Master Alliance were so united. Lin Feng's current plan was to deepen the benefits he could reap from the Soul Master Alliance. He wanted them to advance and retreat together with the Soul Master Alliance before gradually assimilating them. As long as this policy was implemented, it wouldn't take long for them to completely become part of the Soul Master Alliance. At that time, the effects of Lin Feng's policies would be infinitely magnified, and the process of deification would also be greatly accelerated. Fenggu, is the plan still going according to the original plan? Tang San confirmed again. We just need to follow the plan steadily. Lin Feng nodded. He raised a finger. In a month's time, Martial Spirit City will be renovated. After that, we want to know everything about the two empires. Finally, we'll gather all the Soul Master forces and city lords of the continent to witness the establishment of the empire. No problem, Ning Fengji replied excitedly. After the empire was established, he would be in charge of the Heavendo Empire. He would have great authority, and the status of the Seven Treasures Glazed sect would also rise. By the way, Fenggu, what should the name of the empire be? Zhu Zhuqing suddenly asked. Let's call it Xia, the Great Xia Empire. It sounds pretty good, Thanos suddenly said. Lin Feng had already thought of this name. If Zhu Zhuqing hadn't mentioned it, he might not have said it. But since he did, he might as well say it. Xia, this name is good. It's wonderful. Ning Fengji immediately said with a smile. Thanos was now the strongest person on the Douluo continent. Even Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu were no match for him. Tang Chen even admitted defeat. Therefore, Ning Fengji knew that Thanos' words were right no matter what he said. I think it's good too. The Great Xia Empire sound great. Tang San also laughed. His thoughts were similar to Ning Fengji's. This was Mr. Destroy's name. No matter how bad it was still a good name. Then it's settled. Lin Feng smiled. Okay, let's follow the plan. If Sect Master Ning is in a hurry, you can return to Heavendo City today. Okay, I'll go back now. Ning Fengji nodded. Lin Feng said that they had a month to prepare. This was still a little urgent. After all, there were many things to do. Ning Fengji was still a little anxious. After agreeing, he quickly flew back to Heavendo City with his people. As for Tang San, he also began to make plans for Heavendo City. Zhu Zhuqing ran to Xiao Wu. The two of them also had things to do. They helped maintain order in Martial Spirit City. As for Lin Feng, he and Thanos went to the house where Bibi Dong and the others were imprisoned. Tang Chun sat cross-legged in front of the door. He was very responsible for guarding the two people inside. He was completely convinced by Thanos. So, when Thanos asked him to guard the door, he had to do a good job. After seeing Lin Feng and Thanos, Tang Chun immediately stood up and said, Elder Mia, Bibi Dong tried to break out twice in the past half a day, but she was stopped by Elder Mia. She and Qian Daolu are currently inside. Tang Chun was still very nervous when he first started guarding them. After all, the two people in the room were Douluo, who was at the pinnacle of rank 99. If they really attacked, he couldn't stop them alone. As he expected, Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu tried to break out not long after they woke up. He was prepared for battle, thinking that there was going to be a tough battle ahead. However, in the next second, Thanos' restrictions came into effect. The two of them couldn't use their soul power at all. Once they used it, they would be weakened. Under such circumstances, Tang Chen easily defeated the two people who tried to escape. At that time, the two of them were in complete disbelief. Now that they thought about it, it was very interesting. After that, they tried to break in again and were easily defeated by him again. At this time, Tang Chen clearly knew how strong Thanos' restrictions were. Even Douluo, who was at the pinnacle of rank 99, couldn't break free. This made Tang Chen admire Thanos even more. After all, the things that Thanos mastered were completely unfathomable to him. Alright, during this time, Qian Daolu still wanted to talk to Tang Chen. In order to avoid suspicion, Tang Chen used his soul power to envelop the room until Lin Feng and Thanos arrived. Well done. Thanos nodded, praising Tang Chen's protection. After saying that, Thanos waved his hand and opened the door of the room. For a moment, Bibi Dong, Qian Daolu, and Hulaina in the room turned their heads at the same time and looked over. Bibi Dong's eyes were full of unwillingness, while Qian Daolu had a resigned expression. Thanos was too strong. He knew that even if it wasn't a sneak attack, he would still lose. As for Hulaina, she had a bitter face as if she had just been reprimanded by Bibi Dong. However, after seeing Lin Feng, her eyes were full of joy. You can leave. Thanos waved at Tang Chen behind him. Hearing this, Douluo, who was at the pinnacle of rank 99, nodded and immediately left. At the same time, he also closed the door obediently. Seeing this, Qian Daolu's expression suddenly darkened. Tang Chen was one of the three pinnacle Douluo back then. He was extremely powerful and could be said to be at the top of the world. However, it was only now that they clearly understood what it meant by there was always someone better than you. Thanos was like a hard hammer that smashed their pride. Even Tang Chen, who was extremely arrogant, had to bow his head in front of Thanos. As for him and Bibi Dong, they were defeated. At this moment, they were fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. After the door was closed, the five people in the room didn't speak. They just looked at each other. Among them, Hulaina was the most nervous. After entering the room, she had been talking to the two of them. She wanted to tell them about the situation of the Soul Master Alliance and some sentences that Lin Feng had taught her. However, after half a day, her words had no effect at all. On the contrary, she was even reprimanded by Bibi Dong. At this moment, she wanted to greet Lin Feng and talk about what had just happened. However, Bibi Dong was looking at her from the side, which made her very uncomfortable. Fortunately, Lin Feng noticed this scene and quickly said, "How is it? Are you comfortable staying in this house?" However, no one answered Lin Feng's words at all. In the eyes of Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu, even if they were captured, their levels were extremely high. Only Tang Chen and Thanos were qualified to talk to them. As for Lin Feng, although he was somewhat famous, he was not qualified to talk to powerhouses like them. Lin Feng also noticed their arrogance. He wasn't angry. He just stretched out his left hand and soul power surged. In the next second, the restrictions in their bodies were activated and an invisible force was added to their bodies. Lin Feng raised his hand and their bodies floated directly in the air. At this moment, the arrogance on Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu's faces couldn't be maintained. They learned from Tang Chen that the restrictions in their bodies were planted by Thanos. At the same time, they were surprised and also very impressed, because they did not know what the principle was at all. It was too high-end. However, at this time, Lin Feng could actually easily trigger this restriction and even control them. This kind of restriction was too complicated and exquisite. The two of them knew that without powerful talent, it was impossible to control it at all. What did this mean? Very simple. Lin Feng was smarter than the two of them, and his strength was also extremely strong. The two of them dared to guarantee that Lin Feng's strength was at least level 97, even level 98. This shocked them. How was this possible? How old was Lin Feng? Such a young super powerhouse. Too inconceivable. Even if he had the inheritance of a god, It was also impossible to be so fast. Lin Feng was only in his 20s, right? Bibi Dong reached the peak of level 99 in her 50s. This was already considered to have broken the record of the Douluo continent, and she felt that no one should be able to surpass her. Even Thanos, in Bibi Dong's heart, was the kind of person who was extremely old. However, at this time, Lin Feng's appearance stunned her. His talent was too strong. What a monster! Feng Ge. Seeing Lin Feng make a move, Hulaina called out anxiously. Bibi Dong was her master after all. Hulaina thought that Lin Feng was going to kill the two of them, so she was prepared to plead. However, Lin Feng smiled. Don't worry, I don't plan to kill them. I just want them to face their identity. As his voice fell, Lin Feng's palms slightly clenched, and the two of them felt as if their bodies were being held by an invisible hand. The huge force hit them, and they only felt unbearable pain. Their bones could not bear the burden, and they let out crisp, creaking sounds. The two of them did not doubt that as long as Lin Feng clenched his fist, they would be crushed by this force. At this point, the two of them clearly understood that they were now lowly captives and did not deserve to be arrogant. Of course, if Lin Feng was a weakling, they would not compromise even if they died. However, from the current situation, they could see that Lin Feng was definitely a super strong person, someone who was qualified to talk to them as equals. Lin Feng did not use too much force. He only did this to remind the two of them of their current situation. Patter. As Lin Feng let go, the two of them fell from the sky and lay on the ground, gasping for breath. At this time, Hulaina immediately came to Bibi Dong's side and helped her up with a look of concern. Master, are you okay? If it was before, Bibi Dong would definitely leave Hulaina and stand up by herself. However, after that incident, the arrogance in her heart seemed to have disappeared in an instant, and she was slightly dazed as Hulaina helped her up. There was no choice. Lin Feng's talent and strength were too terrifying, and he was still young. Anyone who knew about his situation would be shocked. Qian Lu struggled to stand up and sat on a chair beside him. He looked at Lin Feng and asked, What? Are you here to humiliate us? That's not it. Lin Feng smiled and said, I'm here mainly to talk to you about being sparring partner for the Soul Master Alliance in the future. Although the word sparring partners was new, they still knew what it meant. Furthermore, the two of them knew a lot of information about Heaven Dose City, especially the captives from the Martial Spirit Hall. In the past year or so, they seemed to have become the so-called sparring partners. Seeing their expressions, Lin Feng continued, Actually, I'm not here to talk to you. I'm here to inform you that in the future, you will be the special sparring partners of the titled Douluo in the Soul Master Alliance. Of course, the restriction that Lin Feng had placed on the two of them wasn't just to prevent them from using their soul power. It was like an adjustable valve, and Lin Feng could actively control how much soul power they used. Usually, if the valve was not controlled, it would be closed, and they would not be able to use soul power at all. However, if they took the initiative to control it, they could still use their strength. If it was fully opened, they could even fight with their full strength. It was precisely because of this complexity that Lin Feng had spent a lot of time to restrain them. Kill us if you want. Qian Lu waved his hand and said, Sparring partners, isn't this a humiliation? Forgive me for not being able to accompany you. Sparring partners, it was too humiliating. Qian Lu would not accept it even if he had to die. Bibi Dong had the same thought. This was too humiliating. Chapter 531. Humiliation. Lin Feng chuckled. How can it be considered humiliation? Our Soul Master Alliance has gathered all the powerful Soul Masters on the continent. If you become their training partner, not only can you quickly increase your own strength, but you can also promote the progress of the entire Soul Master world. And most importantly, as long as you become our training partner for 10 years, you will regain your freedom. When he said the first few sentences, Bibi Dong and Qian Doliu's expressions didn't change at all. There was even a trace of disdain. To put it nicely, they were training partners. To put it bluntly, they were prisoners. Therefore, the two of them were very disdainful towards Lin Feng's words. However, when Lin Feng said the last sentence, the situation completely changed. The two of them widened their eyes in disbelief. What did they just hear? Set them free? How is that possible? The two of them had never thought of that. In their opinion, the two of them wouldn't have a good ending. They would either work for the rest of their lives or be killed. And now, Lin Feng actually said that as long as they were training partners for 10 years, they would be set free. 10 years wasn't a long time to them. Therefore, when they heard Lin Feng's words, they didn't believe it at all. At this moment, the two of them looked at Thanos, as if they wanted to see from his face that this was a joke. Thanos only nodded. Train for 10 years, and you'll be set free. The 10 years that Lin Feng was talking about was the same as the 2 years of tax exemption that he had asked the Snow Knight Emperor for. On the surface, the other party seemed hopeful and moved. But in reality, it wouldn't take that long. Lin Feng wouldn't need the midway. In 1.5 years, the Heaven Do Empire would surrender. On Bibi Dong's side, Lin Feng estimated that he would be able to become a god in at most 8 years. At that time, Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu would be dispensable to him. So what if he set them free? Under the circumstances of him becoming a god, they wouldn't dare to be impudent at all. How about it? 10 years of sparring in exchange for freedom in the future. Isn't this a good deal? Lin Feng said indifferently, Bibi Dong, I gave you this chance because of your disciple. Otherwise, you would have died. Hearing this, Bibi Dong glanced at Hulaina. No one knew what he was thinking. Hearing Hulaina's words, she was very nervous at this time. She lowered her head slightly and didn't dare to look at others. What does a sparring partner need to do? Where is the location? Thousand Streams suddenly asked from behind. Compared to Bibi Dong's unwillingness, Thousand Dao Flo still had the thought of the winner taking all. After all, Tang Chun was so respectful to Thanos. As someone of the same generation as Tang Chun, it was not shameful to lose to Thanos. At this moment, he was thinking about Qian Renshue. If he wasn't mistaken, Qian Renshue should still be in Heaven Do City. That was if he had some freedom as a sparring partner of the Soul Master Alliance. He could secretly nurture Qian Renshue and even let her receive the inheritance of the angel god. As long as Qian Renshue could become a god, they still had hope of turning the tables. However, Thousand Dao Flo didn't know that Qian Renshue had already joined the Soul Master Alliance. Furthermore, her relationship with Lin Feng and the others might be even better than her grandfather. There are no chores, and you don't have to do anything extra. You just have to fight during the Soul Master Alliance's quarterly examination. As for the location, of course, it will be in Martial Spirit City. Normally, no one will care about you, but you're not allowed to leave the city. The restrictions on your bodies will be locked, and we will know your real-time location. If you have any thoughts of running away, your 10 years will be extended by 1 year. If something bad happens, you can't be left alive. Lin Feng gave a rough explanation of the situation. At the end, he even gave a threat to make the two of them hesitate. Otherwise, if he treated them too well, they might become arrogant after 1 or 2 years. When Lin Feng and Thousand Dao Flo were talking, Bibi Dong didn't say a word. She just listened quietly. In fact, this meant that she no longer objected to this matter. Otherwise, according to her style, she would have expressed her strong objection like before. We can't leave Martial Spirit City? Thousand Dao Flo frowned. Then wouldn't we be living like prisoners for 10 years? If he was alone, it would be worth it to stay in Martial Spirit City for 10 years in exchange for freedom. However, Thousand Dao Flo had other ideas now, so he had to fight for the chance to go to Heaven Do City. Otherwise, he could only think of a way to get Qian Renshue to come to Martial Spirit City. It depends on the situation. Maybe in the future, but the two of you can forget about it for a year. By the way, other than the quarterly examination, Mr. Destroy especially likes to spar with others. Therefore, your main task is not to be the Soul Master Alliance's sparring partners, but to spar with Mr. Destroy often. Lin Feng forbade Bibi Dong and Thousand Dao Flo from leaving Martial Spirit City for a year mainly because he wanted to use this year to grind for experience. However, because these two people were special, Lin Feng didn't want to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. He wanted to spar with them every once in a while, just like when he was in Heaven Do City. That's not a problem, Bibi Dong suddenly said. She was only a step away from rank 100. As long as she had the chance to fight with Thanos, she had hopes of breaking through rank 100. Of course, this was only BB Dong's guess. The restriction in her body was too strong, and she wasn't completely confident. However, this was BB Dong's only hope at this moment. In Lin Feng's opinion, BB Dong was delusional. Lin Feng's restriction didn't just restrict her soul power, but also added a lock on the laws. This lock was very simple, and anyone who knew how to break it would be able to do so. However, in the entire Da continent, other than Lin Feng, who else had touched the threshold of God? Therefore, at this time, unless a god descended to the mortal world, no one would be able to break the restriction on BB Dong and Thousand Dao Flow. I have no problem either. Thousand Dao Flow nodded. Soon, he asked again, "You mean in a year, we can leave Martial Spirit City?" Lin Feng pondered for a moment and said, "More or less. However, leaving Martial Spirit City doesn't mean that you can run around, but that you have the chance to go out for a period of time under someone's watch." Lin Feng didn't need to personally watch over the two of them. Just like the Marvel family's token, Lin Feng only needed to use the 1,000-machine ruler to condense a small object, and others could use this thing to locate the two of them. Therefore, Lin Feng could easily let people watch over the two of them and prevent them from sneaking away. After hearing Lin Feng's words, Thousand Dao Flow wanted to say something. However, after a pause, he closed his mouth in the end. Now is not the time to bargain. Everything could wait and see. Anyway, the two of them couldn't be watched 24/7. There would always be a chance in the future. Just as the two of them were thinking, Lin Feng said again, "Other than the two of you, all the members of the Martial Spirit Hall will enjoy the same treatment. As long as you work for the Soul Master Alliance for 10 years, you will have the chance to be free." There were still many Soul Masters in the Martial Spirit Hall, and there were also many strong ones. Especially in the Star Luo Empire, there were many people who were loyal to the Martial Spirit Hall. If Lin Feng killed them all, it would affect the Soul Master Alliance's image and hinder the development of the Soul Master world. Therefore, Lin Feng came up with this idea. He wanted this group of people to work for the Soul Master Alliance for 10 years, and then he would let them go. He didn't believe that the Soul Master Alliance's excellent system couldn't change the perception of the Martial Spirit Hall Soul Masters after 10 years. Maybe after 10 years, these people wouldn't want to leave the Martial Spirit Hall. Suddenly, Lin Feng said, "Of course, I have a condition." Hearing this, BB Dong and Qin Daolu were enlightened. The Martial Spirit Hall was destroyed. Under normal circumstances, they should have been killed. After all, with such a powerful force, it would be too easy to cause a backlash if they didn't kill them. Now that Lin Feng was treating them so well, it was really suspicious. At this moment, Lin Feng said that he had a condition, so the two of them felt normal. "What condition?" BB Dong asked. "It's very simple. The two of you have to go to the Star Luo Empire and ask all the members of the Martial Spirit Hall to surrender." Lin Feng said, "In the current situation, with Dai Mubai and the Star Luo Empire's royal family, it wouldn't take long for the Soul Master Alliance to accept the Star Luo Empire. However, because of the remnant forces of the Martial Spirit Hall, there might be some accidents during the acceptance process. If BB Dong went to the Star Luo Empire to persuade them to surrender, this accident might not happen." Lin Feng wanted this. "What else?" BB Dong asked. In her opinion, this wasn't a request at all. This was because it was too simple. It could even be said that she should do it. This way, she could prevent more members of the Martial Spirit Hall from dying. Even if Lin Feng didn't say it, BB Dong would mention it later. "No, this is it," Lin Feng said. Hearing this, BB Dong and Qian Daoliu's eyes widened. They thought that Lin Feng would ask them for soul bones and soul rings, or ask them about some secrets. After all, everyone wanted to maximize their gains after destroying the Martial Spirit Hall. However, they didn't expect Lin Feng to make such a simple request. BB Dong was doubtful. "Are you representing the Soul Master Alliance?" She was afraid that Lin Feng only made a personal request, and that the others in the Soul Master Alliance would have other requests. "This is what the Soul Master Alliance wants," Lin Feng said with certainty. He knew what BB Dong was thinking. She felt that this condition was too simple. However, Bibi Dong didn't know Lin Feng's true strength. No one in the entire continent could surpass him. What Bibi Dong and the others thought was important was nothing to Lin Feng. Since none of you have any objections, the agreement is finalized. From tomorrow onwards, Elder Tang Chun will bring the two of you to the Star Luo Empire. You have half a month to persuade them to surrender. I hope that the entire Star Luo Empire will be under the control of the Soul Master Alliance in half a month. Currently, the Star Luo Empire was a little troublesome to control. As for the Heaven Do Empire, the Soul Master Alliance had already infiltrated the entire empire. Now that the Soul Master Alliance was unified, the dukedoms, kingdoms, and nobles immediately expressed their warm welcome. It wasn't that they didn't like the Heaven Do Empire of the past. It was just that compared to the Heaven Do Empire, the Soul Master Alliance could bring them more benefits. All right, since we're done, we'll take our leave. Lin Feng clasped his hands together. After he finished speaking, he stood where he was and looked at Hulaina. Aren't you going to follow? Hearing this, Hulaina felt as if she had been pardoned and hurriedly followed. As she was too nervous, she didn't even say goodbye to Bibi Dong. Fengge, my master. After leaving the room, Hulaina immediately wanted to explain something to Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng only smiled and said, "Don't worry, your master will be fine. As long as she doesn't cause trouble and works for the Soul Master Alliance obediently for 10 years, they won't make things difficult for her." Hearing this, Hulaina was very surprised. She wanted to thank Lin Feng, but she didn't know how to thank him. In the end, all her gratitude turned into a single sentence. "Thank you. Between the two of us, there's no need to thank me." Lin Feng laughed. While the two of them were talking, Thanos had already informed Tang Chun and arranged for him to bring Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu to the Star Luo Empire tomorrow. However, at this moment, Xiao Wu was leading Zhu Zhuqing over from the street not far away. "Take Shi. Let me tell you," Mr. Destroy slapped the Martial Spirit Hall's high priest and elders with one palm. That Pope Bibi Dong didn't even last 3 minutes and was captured on the spot. And that Qian Daolu, he wanted to run, but Mr. Destroy caught him easily. Now the two of them are locked in the house in front. "Let me take you to the side to take a look," Xiao Wu said excitedly as she pulled Zhu Zhuqing over. After all, the Pope and the High Priest of the Martial Spirit Hall were captured. They were very famous, and even Zhu Zhuqing wanted to come and take a look. Therefore, the two of them rushed over from the Pope's palace as they talked. At this time, Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu's strength was no longer what it used to be. One of them was a titled Douluo, and the other was a soul Douluo. Their physical qualities were extremely strong, and their eyesight was also very good. From afar, the two of them saw Thanos. His white clothes and white mask were too easy to distinguish. Then the two of them saw Lin Feng and Hulaina next to him. At first, the two of them were surprised that they happened to meet Fengge here and could even talk. Then, accompanied by Fengge, they came into close contact with Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu. But when they saw Hulaina, they were all shocked. They had a good impression of Hulaina. At least they knew about her. But she was only a soul sage. Logically speaking, she should be escorted to that square. Why was she with Lin Feng now? And they looked very close. For a moment, the two of them rushed toward Lin Feng anxiously. Chapter 532. Lin Feng wasn't too surprised to see Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu at the door. He knew that everyone would find out about Hulaina's situation sooner or later. It was a good thing that they'd run into each other now. "Fengge, who's this?" Xiao Wu asked as soon as she arrived. She recognized Hulaina. After all, they'd been opponents in the tournament. Hulaina's fox martial soul had left a deep impression on her. The reason why Xiao Wu said this was to help Zhu Zhuqing find out more about the situation. After all, they still didn't know why Hulaina was here. It wouldn't be good if they misunderstood. "Hulaina, Bibi Dong's disciple," Lin Feng said with a smile. Lin Feng then pointed at Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu and said, "These two are Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu. You should know them." Oh, I remember. "Fengge, why is she here?" Xiao Wu asked again. In fact, Zhu Zhuqing had asked her to ask these questions through voice transmission. Because of their sibling relationship, it was more appropriate for Xiao Wu to ask these questions. I forgot to tell you. Xiao San and I went to the capital of Massacre. We met Hulaina there, Lin Feng said with a smile. Hulaina said, back then, it was all thanks to Feng Ge that I was saved. Otherwise, I would have died in the capital of Massacre. Tang Chun rubbed his nose when he heard them discussing the capital of Massacre. He was slightly embarrassed. After all, he'd been delirious and had committed all kinds of crimes in the capital of Massacre. Now that he thought about it, it was really embarrassing that Douluo, who was at the pinnacle of rank 99, was delirious. No one noticed Tang Chen's strange behavior at this time. Lin Feng continued, just now we had a negotiation with Bibi Dong. In the future, she and the Thousand Dao Flow will be our Soul Master Alliance's sparring partners. During this negotiation, Hulaina played a huge role. Lin Feng did not exaggerate anything. He and Bibi Dong could be said to be enemies with very clear attitudes. This was the first time they had met since the two of them were imprisoned. If it wasn't for Hulaina's conversation during this half a day, the two sides might have fought as soon as they met. Even if Bibi Dong couldn't win, the final scene would definitely be more awkward. Therefore, Hulaina played an important role in today's smooth negotiations. Listening to Lin Feng's words, Xiao Wu could tell that Lin Feng didn't have any hostility towards Hulaina. He looked very friendly. This was not good. Hulaina was indeed beautiful, especially her charm. Her martial spirit had greatly enhanced her. Under such circumstances, it was very easy for Feng Ge to fall in love with someone else. No, I have to correct Feng Ji's thinking. After all, Zhu Zhuqing and Ning Rongrong were on the same side. Furthermore, they both liked Feng Ge. After being together for so long, Xiao Wu had more or less accepted the two of them as Feng Ge's girlfriends. However, someone suddenly appeared at this time. She was even the disciple of the great demon, Bibi Dong. Under such circumstances, Xiao Wu was naturally very hostile towards Hulaina. However, Zhu Zhuqing's words made her even more hostile. After all, she was a love rival. Previously, there was Ning Rongrong. They were very familiar with each other. In fact, they had even accepted the situation of marrying Lin Feng together. However, Hulaina had suddenly interfered. Furthermore, Lin Feng had a very good impression of her, especially when the two of them had met alone in Massacre City. All these factors added together meant that she was a strong opponent. Thinking of this, Zhu Zhuqing suddenly stepped forward and hugged Lin Feng's arm. She said, Feng Ge, you said that you would take me to plan Martial Spirit City. Let's go now. After saying that, Zhu Zhuqing even shook Lin Feng's hand. Lin Feng was astonished by this scene. Zhu Zhuqing liked to hide her words in her heart. She rarely expressed them. Her actions were very conservative. She rarely took the initiative to get close to him. However, Zhu Zhuqing was not only getting close to him, she was also very bold. Her entire body was almost sticking to his arm. Previously, Lin Feng had actually thought about the situation of Hulaina and Zhu Zhuqing meeting. He guessed that Zhu Zhuqing might question or be angry. However, Lin Feng didn't expect things to turn out this way. It was as if they were fighting for his favor. However, this was good. Lin Feng liked it very much. It just so happens that Lil Na is more familiar with Martial Spirit City. Let's go together, Lin Feng said with a smile. Lil Na? The moment Xiao Wu heard this word, she knew that things were bad. Earlier, she had only guessed that Lin Feng had a good impression of Hulaina. However, she was now 100% sure. She even guessed that something might have happened between the two in Massacre City. Otherwise, why would they be so close? Zhu Zhuqing, who was at the side, stiffened because of this name. Good heavens! They even called each other by their nicknames. The relationship between the two of them was too close. Zhu Zhuqing was very nervous. She opened her mouth and subconsciously wanted to reject Lin Feng's suggestion. However, after thinking about it, Lin Feng's reason was flawless. Hulaina grew up in Martial Spirit City. With her following them, it would be much more convenient. Just as she was in a daze, Hulaina nodded and said, No problem. I'm very familiar with Martial Spirit City. Then let's go, Lin Feng said with a smile. At this moment, his right hand was around Zhu Zhuqing's slender waist, and his left hand was holding Hulaina's hand. He looked very dashing. Xiao Wu, who was at the side, wanted to say something. At the same time, she prepared to follow. However, at this moment, an invisible energy enveloped her and restricted her to the spot. Even her words could not be transmitted. Of course, the person who did this was Lin Feng. Right now, he was enjoying the leisurely time of the three of them. Xiao Wu, the third wheel, actually wanted to follow them. She really didn't know what was going on. Go find your third brother. Lin Feng's voice sounded in this small space. After Xiao Wu heard it, she looked depressed. Stupid Feng Ge. Seeing the three of them leave, she could only stomp her feet angrily and go find Tang San. On Lin Feng's side, he was very happy with having two women in his arms. He knew the personalities of the two women very well. At this time, Xiao Wu, the little troublemaker, was not around. Even if Lin Feng was sitting on two women at the same time, he could easily mediate between them. Just like this, half a day passed after circling Martial Spirit City. The sky also darkened. After half a day of chatting, Lin Feng successfully suppressed Zhu Zhuqing's wariness. Zhu Zhuqing was not Ning Rongrong. Ning Rongrong's personality was more lively and not easy to fool. It took time to grind her down. Zhu Zhuqing's words were easier to talk to. Lin Feng reasoned with her. In half a day, she had already called Hulaina's sister. In this way, Hulaina could use Zhu Zhuqing as a breakthrough point to become familiar with Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Ma Hongjun. And this was also Lin Feng's plan. As long as he slowly increased their favorability, Hulaina would soon be able to integrate into the Soul Master Alliance. Of course, in the entire upper echelon of the Martial Spirit Hall, only Hulaina could integrate. As for the others, even Hulaina's brother, Lin Feng, did not care about him. Anyway, no one would die. Lin Feng also asked for Hulaina's opinion. In the end, he treated them equally. In the square in front of the Pope's palace, a large round table was set up. On it was a sumptuous meal. Today, the Soul Master Alliance unified the continent. Although it was only in name and had not officially begun, the atmosphere of excitement had already spread to everyone. So tonight, everyone had a small gathering. After the members of the Soul Master Alliance officially settled in Martial Spirit City, they would take the time to have a big gathering. Of course, not everyone came to this gathering. After all, there were still many captives in the city that needed to be looked after. In the end, only about 10 people came to the gathering. And this time, there was nothing special about the gathering. Everyone ate and drank, and the atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. During this time, Lin Feng's interest was piqued. He felt that the name Martial Spirit City was not good enough, so he changed it to Great Xia City. He also made a plaque on the spot and had people hang it on all the city walls. At the same time, he took out the blueprint of Great Xia City that he spent the entire afternoon making and threw it to Tang San. That's right, in the next month, Tang San's main task was to be in charge of the construction of Great Xia City and build it according to the plan. As for Lin Feng himself, his main task in this month was to build signal towers all over the continent. He did not need to care about the big cities in the Star Luo Empire. When the time came, Ning Fengji would arrange for people to build them. Lin Feng wanted to go to those deep mountains, forests, islands, and so on. In any case, his ultimate goal was to have signal everywhere on the continent. In this way, the speed of information transmission would be greatly increased. It would be a great boost to the development of the Soul Master Alliance. Of course, before doing these things, Lin Feng still had to make arrangements for Bibi Dong and the others. He also had to hold a special meeting with all the higher-ups of the Soul Master Alliance. He had to explain the development plan in detail. Although Lin Feng had already written the plan and distributed it, everyone's ability to understand was different. In order to avoid big mistakes, Lin Feng still had to explain it. Just like that, a week passed very quickly. In this week, everything developed according to Lin Feng's plan. Because of Bibi Dong's persuasion, the Star Luo Empire was quickly recovered. There was no need to talk about the Heaven Do Empire. The Soul Master Alliance had already made arrangements. At this moment, they immediately surrendered. Of course, all of this was not important to Lin Feng. What he cared about the most was Hulaina's situation. On the second day after the banquet, Lin Feng brought Zhu Zhuqing, Xiao Wu, and the others to the Star Luo Empire. After 3 days of interaction, Hulaina and Xiao Wu's relationship became better. After that, Lin Feng brought the few of them back to Heavendo City. Lin Feng, Zhu Zhuqing, Hulaina, and Xiao Wu appeared in front of Ning Rongrong and the others. They weren't as noisy as Lin Feng had imagined. Instead, they were very amiable. In fact, Lin Feng was a little stunned. He thought that Ning Rongrong and the others would be surprised. After all, Hulaina had never appeared in front of them before. However, he neglected one thing: the popularity of cell phones. On the first day that Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu discovered Hulaina, Xiao Wu called Ning Rongrong and told her about it. At that time, Ning Rongrong was prepared to come to Great Xia City to find Lin Feng. However, Zhu Zhuqing called Ning Rongrong and talked for a long time. Just like that, Ning Rongrong understood Hulaina very well after a few days. Therefore, when Oscar Mahongjun and the others saw everyone, they were very calm. Of course, calmness was one thing. Ning Rongrong was still a little nervous. After all, there was another love rival. How would Lin Feng's heart change in the future? This was something that Ning Rongrong couldn't predict. Lin Feng could see Ning Rongrong's worry. Therefore, in the next few days, he had been trying to ease the relationship between the few of them. In just 3 days, Lin Feng's charisma was too great. In addition, he was very good at talking. Soon, Hulaina became familiar with everyone. Of course, Hulaina was also very good at socializing. Under the dual effects, it was so fast. At this time, everything had stabilized. The Soul Master Alliance's collection of information on the continent was also proceeding in an orderly manner. Lin Feng didn't delay. He immediately started to build signal towers on the continent according to his original plan. And just as Douluo's continent was changing step by step in the God Realm, in the Angel Temple and the Rakshasa Temple, the two great gods both felt a trace of a situation. The restriction that Lin Feng set in their bodies was too strong. It cut off all their soul power connections to the outside world. Under such circumstances, the angel god couldn't sense the situation of the 1,000 streams. As for Bibi Dong, as the only Rakshasa god's current 9 divine tests examinee, the Rakshasa god had always been very concerned about her. Now that he suddenly lost the connection, he didn't even know the current situation of Bibi Dong's assessment. This was really too surprising. In addition to being surprised, the two gods immediately investigated to see what had happened. However, because the God Realm and Douluo's world were isolated, they couldn't clearly investigate the entire continent. At most, they could only investigate the vicinity of their own land of inheritance. In this way, they didn't find anything. Now, if the angel god and the Rakshasa god wanted to figure out the situation, they could either find a way to call people from the land of inheritance in the lower realm to inquire, or they could go down to the lower realm to investigate. In the first case, the two land of inheritance were extremely special. They couldn't find anyone at all. It would probably take them a few years to have a chance to understand the situation. The second possibility was to choose to go down to the lower realm personally. This was almost an impossible thing because the God Realm strictly limited this kind of thing. Even if there was something important, it needed the approval of the God Realm's committee. Of course, they could secretly go down to the lower realm, but if they were caught, they would be severely punished. These two methods were obviously not feasible. At present, the two of them thought of a way to find someone else to inquire. It seemed that the sea god Poseidon also had an inheritance in Douluo's world. It had lasted for so many years. It was said that not long ago, the 9 sea god tests were issued twice in a row. They might be able to get some information from there. Thinking, the two of them ran toward the sea god temple at the same time. Chapter 533. Sea God Temple. Poseidon sat on the throne and looked at the angel god and Rakshasa god, who came to the hall almost at the same time. He was slightly confused. Why have you two come to my temple? In the divine realm, there are many gods. Generally, except for major events, it was normal for some gods who were not familiar with each other to not meet for hundreds of years. After all, they had long lives. Hundreds of years were nothing to them. It would pass in a flash. Obviously, Poseidon was not familiar with the angel god and Rakshasa god, so he did not understand why the two of them suddenly came. Seeing Poseidon's confusion, the angel god and Rakshasa god understood that the other party's inheritance in the Douluo continent should not be affected. Otherwise, they should know why the two of them came. Thinking, the angel god said something happened in the Douluo plain. My guardian in the Douluo world suddenly lost contact with him without any warning. Mine too, Rakshasa god said. I finally found a suitable successor. I didn't expect to lose contact with him too. I heard that the sea god island in the Douluo world just got two extremely talented successors. How are they doing? The two of them came to find the sea god at the same time. In addition to the other party's inheritance in the Douluo world, there was another important reason. The sea god had just obtained two extremely talented successors. Not long after this incident, their successors and guardians had lost contact with each other. Because of this, they suspected that the situation in the Douluo world was related to the sea god. Them? Poseidon frowned slightly and sensed. When he heard the two of them say that something happened in the Douluo world, he immediately became worried. He was afraid that Lin Feng and Tang San were also in danger. But after sensing, he found that there was no problem at all. Everything was normal. It could be said that Poseidon had high hopes for these two successors. Now that they were safe, he heaved a sigh of relief. Thinking about it, he said, my two inheritors are fine. I haven't lost contact with them. I can still sense them. What's going on with you guys? The angel god and Rakshasa god came over almost at the same time, and they didn't seem to notice anything. This made Poseidon more vigilant. I don't know. The angel god shook his head and said, our god seat is special. We don't have many followers, but there are many followers on Sea God's Island. We want to see if you found anything. Hearing this, Poseidon also remembered this point. He nodded and said, wait here, I'll go and ask. As soon as he finished speaking, Poseidon immediately summoned a miracle on Sea God's Island to summon Poseidon. At this moment, a golden light shone from the sea god mountain. Poseidon, who was meditating, was pleasantly surprised. A miracle. Without hesitation, he immediately went to the statue of the sea god in the sea god temple and quietly accepted the god's instructions. Have there been any disturbances in the surroundings recently? In fact, under normal circumstances, the sea god would not ask about such things. After all, as gods, they had to maintain a sense of mystery. If he had to ask about such a trivial matter, it would be too degrading. However, today was special. Two gods came together, and the matter was related to his two inheritors, so he had to figure out the situation first. Lord Sea God, there are no disturbances around Sea God Island. The sea beasts have submitted and are very stable. Poseidon replied respectfully. She thought that the sea god was patrolling the sea, so she was very excited. What about the two examinees of the 9 trials of the sea god? What's the situation now? Poseidon continued to ask. There were no abnormalities around Sea God Island, so the situation probably came from the mainland. Previously, he knew that Lin Feng and Tang San had left Sea God Island, so he urgently wanted to know how Lin Feng and the others were doing. Lord Sea God, your two examinees are now training on the mainland of Douluo, working hard for the 8th trial. Poseidon continued to answer respectfully. What's the situation? Poseidon said. I'm not sure. Please forgive me, Lord Sea God. Poseidon was slightly frightened. Sea God Island was too far away from the mainland, and Lin Feng did not give them a call, so they were not very clear about the situation on the mainland of Douluo. Got it. After that, Poseidon retracted his divine sense. After these few sentences, he could be sure of one thing. The situation on Douluo must have happened on the mainland, and the sea was as calm as ever. Other than that, Poseidon was not sure, but he had a hunch that this so-called situation was most likely related to Lin Feng and Tang San. After all, the two of them were too talented, especially Lin Feng. His talent was simply terrifying. If he could condense the deity position, it was estimated that he could reach the strength of a level 1 god within 1,000 years. Within 10,000 years, There was even hope for him to become a god king. Such people were destined to be lonely. How is it? Did you find anything? Seeing that Poseidon seemed to have communicated with the lower realm, Rakshasa deity immediately asked. Poseidon shook his head. I didn't find anything, but there's nothing abnormal in the sea. It's most likely that something happened on the mainland. We have the same guess. Angel deity and Rakshasa deity looked at each other and said. Then, Angel deity asked tentatively, can we apply to the Heavenly Realm Committee to go down and check? Don't even think about it. Poseidon waved his hand and said, the purpose of the Heavenly Realm Committee is to make decisions for important matters. And now it's just a matter between the two of you. It can't even be considered an important matter. The committee also has a rule that because of personal matters, the committee can't be used. Hearing this, Angel deity's expression darkened. Then we can't do anything? They knew about the situation of the Heavenly Realm Committee. Just now, they said it subconsciously. Don't worry. I'll send someone to investigate the continent. It won't be long before we get news. Poseidon comforted him. The flow of time in the heavenly realm was different from that in Douluo's world. One day in the heavenly realm was 1 year in the lower realm. When Poseidon said it wouldn't take long, it really wouldn't take long. As soon as he finished speaking, he went down to the lower realm again and found Poseidon. This time, he didn't waste any time and directly asked Poseidon to go to the mainland to inquire about the situation. After all, this matter was too important. Even if the Sea God's Island didn't have Douluo at its peak to protect it, he still had to find out. Just like that, after Poseidon received the task, he quickly rushed to Douluo's mainland. Lin Feng and the others didn't know about this. At this time, he was constantly shuttling through forests and mountains. On one hand, he was setting up a signal tower. On the other hand, he was investigating Douluo's world. Lin Feng used to think that he had traveled all over the mainland. In fact, he had only traveled to all the cities. The situation in Douluo's world was like the ancient times in his previous life. It was very large, but most of it was inaccessible mountains and forests. The places where humans lived only occupied a very small part of the mainland. There were also very few roads and things like that. It couldn't be compared to the prosperity of a modern world. At this time, Lin Feng was walking in the forests and mountains. From time to time, he would see some fresh soul beasts and herbs. These were all things that didn't exist in books. They were very novel, and Lin Feng was very interested. At the same time, the renovation plan of Martial Spirit City was in full swing. Tang Sin was doing most of the things himself these days. Every day was very fulfilling. On the other hand, the Star Luo Empire was almost completely conquered. The Soul Master Alliance branches in the major cities were already in the process of being built. Alright, the laboratory in Heavendo City had already started moving. The first thing that Tang Sin built in Martial Spirit City was the laboratory. Not only did he copy it, but he also expanded it a lot. This way, it would be more convenient for the masters to experiment. 3 days passed quickly. Just as Lin Feng was about to reach the coiling dragon forest, his phone suddenly rang. To be more precise, it was the phone of Thanos' identity that was ringing. One had to know that because of Thanos' identity, no one would call him unless it was an emergency. Now that his phone was ringing, something important must have happened. Things were just as Lin Feng thought. As soon as the call connected, Tang San's voice came through. Mr. Destroy, bring phone good back quickly. The great consecrator of Sea God's Island is in Great Xia City. Got it. Lin Feng used Thanos' voice to reply. Then, he hung up the phone. Poseidon is here? This was something new. After all, she was the great consecrator of Sea God's Island. Protecting Sea God's Island was her top priority. It seemed that ever since she became the great consecrator, she had never left Sea God's Island. But now, not only did she leave Sea God's Island, but she was also in Great Xia City. This didn't happen in the original novel. What was the reason? With curiosity in mind, Lin Feng didn't stay for long. He quickly rushed to Great Xia City. At this time, Great Xia City was full of soul masters working in full swing. Under Tang San's command, the city was constantly being planned. The Panos Palace, no, it should be called the Alliance Hall now. In the Alliance Hall, Tang San, Ning Rongrong, and Xiao Wu were all gathered together to welcome Poseidon's arrival. After all, Hu Hao had once been one of the three-peak Douluo on the continent, and he was also the chief consecrator of the Sea God's Island. The Soul Master Alliance had to show how they treated their guests, both publicly and privately. Even Tang Chan accompanied her to welcome her. Of course, this wasn't requested by Tang San. He was the one who took the initiative to welcome her. Ever since Poseidon had appeared, he had been watching her stealthily, and he had been trying to win her affections with great passion. Poseidon was also shocked by Tang Chen's appearance. After all, he had disappeared for so long that she thought he was dead. Now that he suddenly appeared, Poseidon was still a little shocked. At the same time, she was a little glad that Tang Chen was still alive. Otherwise, the two of them would never see each other again. Deep in her heart, Poseidon still liked Tang Chen. However, as the great consecrator of the sea god, she had no choice. There were some things that she couldn't decide, especially now that Lin Feng and Tang San were about to take the 9 tests of the sea god. She would soon sacrifice herself. Under such circumstances, Poseidon didn't dare to do anything with Tang Chen. Otherwise, Tang Chen would definitely be hurt in the end. Now, being able to see him once was enough. Thinking of this, Poseidon's response to Tang Chen's enthusiasm was very calm. Tang Chen felt a trace of resistance from her, but he didn't care at all. He was as enthusiastic as ever. Of course, enthusiasm was enthusiasm, but they still had to talk about business. After Tang San called Thanos, he immediately asked about Poseidon's purpose. Before the other party could answer, Lin Feng and Thanos suddenly appeared in the hall. The distance from the coiling dragon forest to Great Xia City was quite far. It took Lin Feng a lot of effort to rush back in a minute. Seeing this, Tang San and the others thought that Lin Feng was near Great Xia City. They didn't expect that they had rushed over from the coiling dragon forest. Tang San and the others looked normal. They even stood up and greeted Thanos. On the other hand, Poseidon was a little surprised. This was because Lin Feng and the others had appeared behind Poseidon. She hadn't noticed him at all just now. One had to know that she was who was at the peak of level 99. Back on the Sea God's Island, she already knew how powerful Thanos was. However, she didn't expect him to be so powerful that he could completely avoid her senses. Seeing this, Tang Chen said telepathically, Elder Slayer's strength is very likely to have reached level 100. He's far beyond us. Tang Chen had long admired Thanos, which was why he gave such a high evaluation. On the other hand, Poseidon was in disbelief. She knew that it was impossible for Thanos to become a god. This was because the commotion caused by obtaining a godly position would be so great that even the divine realm would sense it. However, everything in the continent was too peaceful. Therefore, she knew that it was impossible for Thanos to become a god. It was because of this that Poseidon was even more shocked. Because according to what Tang Chen said, Thanos definitely had the strength of a god rank, which made Tang Chen admire him. At the same time, when she rushed to the mainland a few days ago, she also heard that Thanos had captured Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu. Bibi Dong aside, Qian Daolu was one of the 3 peak Douluo. For Thanos to capture him so easily, his strength was still very terrifying. If Thanos really hadn't reached level 100, but he had the strength of a god, then he was an existence that transcended the laws. This kind of person was too terrifying. If there were no accidents and he continued to cultivate, there was a high possibility that he could condense a godly position. In her heart, only Tang Chen was worthy of this evaluation. However, her evaluation at that time was only a small possibility. However, she felt that Thanos was very likely. Poseidon was shocked, but soon she recovered and said very formally, Great consecrator of the Sea God's Island, Poseidon. This kind of self-introduction was considered an extremely formal self-introduction. It was like 2 soul masters announcing their names and ranks before a duel. Thanos didn't feel proud. He nodded and said, Elder of the Soul Master Alliance, Thanos. Chapter 534. After the introductions, Thanos naturally sat on the main seat. Tang San was also very tactful and stood to the side. On the surface, he was the leader of the Soul Master Alliance. However, all the important decisions were made by Thanos. Hence, in terms of status, Thanos was the most powerful person in the Soul Master Alliance. Tell me, why did you come to Great Xia City? Thanos went straight to the point. As the saying went, one's strength determined one's right to speak. If Lin Feng wasn't strong enough, he would definitely be polite and tactful with his words. However, Lin Feng's strength had already reached the peak of Douluo's continent. There was no need for him to hesitate. Great Xia City? Bai Sai was confused. Wasn't this Martial Spirit City? When did it become Great Xia City? Although Poseidon had heard a lot of news along the way, such as the Martial Spirit Hall being destroyed and the Soul Master Alliance unifying the continent, and so on. However, Lin Feng hadn't announced the name change of the city and the birth of the Great Xia Empire. It was normal that Poseidon didn't know. Of course, although she had doubts about these things, she didn't ask any questions. Instead, she said, the sea god is very concerned about Lin Feng and Tang San. I'm here to see how you're doing. The sea god is concerned? Lin Feng was a little surprised. The sea god was high up in the god realm. It was normal for her to take notice of the candidates. However, she was so concerned that she sent someone to check on them. It was very strange. After all, in the original book, the sea god wasn't so concerned about Tang San even though he was very talented. As he thought, Lin Feng said, Xiao San and I are doing well. We'll be able to meet the requirements for the 8th test soon. Tang San nodded and said, that's right. I've gathered all my soul bones and my soul power has reached rank 88. I'll be able to reach rank 90 in half a year. Although Tang San had been busy for the past few months, he had been cultivating all the time because of the soul power control technique. Therefore, he didn't fall behind much in terms of his speed of improvement. Half a year to become a title Douluo was actually a conservative estimate. In fact, it was very likely that he would succeed in 4 months. Apart from Tang San's improvement, the others had also made considerable progress. This was especially true for Oscar and Ma Hongjun. Both of them had become Soul Douluo and absorbed the God Soul Ring. They each obtained a 100,000-year Soul Ring. Oh, right, Xiao was also a Douluo. One had to know that she was now a title Douluo. Normally, it was extremely difficult for a title Douluo to break through by 1 level. However, Xiao was able to break through 2 levels in a row. She was only a little slower than when she was Soul Douluo, although a large part of the reason was that she didn't lack cultivation resources. She often ate soul stones, spirit herbs, spirit fruits, and so on. However, her intelligence was also a large part of the reason. Within 10 years, Lin Feng estimated that Xiao Wu would have a chance of reaching rank 100. The sea god had spent more than 1,000 years to successfully break through rank 100 and become a god. That was using a dead-end method. But now times had changed. At this time, Lin Feng had already discovered the essence of soul power and many of its rules. Back then, he could quickly help Douluo break through from rank 91 to rank 95. Now that his comprehension ability was even better, it shouldn't be a problem for him to help Xiao Wu break through to rank 100 in 10 years. Of course, this was only Lin Feng's estimation. He couldn't guarantee the specific situation. That's fast. This is beyond my expectations, Poseidon said with a bit of surprise. She remembered that when Tang San came to the Sea God's Island, he was only a soul saint. Based on his current speed, he could break through 2 major realms in 2 years. This speed of improvement was shocking. However, Poseidon was also someone who had seen the world. Her shock didn't last long. She soon came back to her senses and remembered her main mission, which was to gather information. Thinking about it, she said, since you're doing well in the test, I'm relieved. The sea god will be very happy to hear about it. By the way, I haven't been to the continent for a long time. Can you tell me what happened recently? Hearing this, Lin Feng could easily tell that Poseidon wanted to know about the situation on the continent. This was just a small matter to him. He didn't want to waste time here. Thinking about it, Thanos nodded and said, no problem. Then, he turned to Tang Chun and said, Elder Tang Chun, you happen to be able to answer High Priest Poseidon's question. You could take care of her. Lin Feng remembered that Tang Chun seemed to like Poseidon a lot. At this moment, Tang Chun was very humble in front of Thanos. He was like a follower and did whatever he said. Therefore, Lin Feng's attitude towards him was quite good. Now that there was something good, he thought of him. Me? Tang Chun was stunned. Then, he immediately smiled and said, "No problem. This is a small matter. No problem at all." This. Poseidon was also stunned. She didn't expect this and wanted to find an excuse to refuse. However, before she could say anything, Thanos had already disappeared and left the hall. He couldn't be bothered to continue arguing with Poseidon. Tang San and Tang Chun would take care of everything. At this moment, Lin Feng also smiled and said, "Mr. Destroy still has things to do, so he'll take his leave first. I'll take my leave too." After saying that, Lin Feng didn't care about Poseidon, who was frowning slightly, and quickly left. Poseidon wanted to say something when Tang Chun immediately came up. "High Priest Poseidon, I'll take care of you next." When he said that, Tang San and the others were very tactful and immediately walked out together. Now, only Tang Chun and Poseidon were left in the hall. Seeing this, Poseidon had no choice but to talk to Tang Chun. After all, she represented the sea god's island and even the image of the sea god. Tang Chun was an elder of the Soul Master Alliance. Even if she had too many reasons to not talk to Tang Chun, she couldn't show them too much at this moment. Just like that, Tang Chun and Poseidon started talking very quickly. One was passionate, the other was calm. Time passed very quickly as they asked and answered questions. In the beginning, Poseidon was quite calm. This was because Tang Chun was talking about things that she had heard along the way. For example, the Soul Master Alliance had unified the continent, destroyed the Martial Soul Hall, and the surrender of the two empires. However, she was slowly astonished when she heard about soul power control and soul tool technology. This was because these things were very novel. Poseidon had never seen them before. They didn't exist on the continent either. It was her first time hearing about them. Tang Chun was also very passionate. When he explained, he didn't just talk about them. He even brought them over for Poseidon to see and try them out. This made Poseidon even more shocked. This was because these things were just like what she had thought. They were too novel. After that, Tang Chun told Poseidon about man-made soul rings. Man-made soul rings? Poseidon was stunned. She only knew about God-given soul rings. What were man-made soul rings? Yes, they are man-made soul rings. Soul rings that are 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, and even 100,000 years can be created and absorbed by any soul master. Tang Chun explained in detail. He could understand Poseidon's shock. When Tang Chun found out about this, he was also very shocked. After all, man-made soul rings were too ridiculous. They were not much different from God-given soul rings. In fact, they were even more specific. How could they not be shocked? How is this possible? Creating soul rings directly. Isn't this the ability of a god? Poseidon was in disbelief. In her heart, the man-made soul rings that Tang Chun was talking about were God-given soul rings. There wasn't much difference. I think so too. That's why I'm guessing that Elder Mia has already broken through rank 100. Tang Chun nodded. Thanos' abilities were too strong. Against Douluo, who were at the peak of rank 99, it was like a father beating his son. Rank 100? That's impossible, Poseidon said with certainty. If a soul master from Douluo wants to become a god, it will cause a huge commotion. I can definitely sense it. I know that too, Tang Chun said helplessly. But Elder Mia is too strong. Rank 99 is already the limit of a soul master. Can you easily capture 1,000 Daos Lu or BB Dong? Tang Chun had the same doubts as Poseidon, but he knew more clearly how big the gap was between a rank 99 soul master and Thanos. Logically speaking, rank 99 was already the peak of Douluo. They were both rank 99. Even if there was a gap in abilities, it shouldn't be so big. But the fact was that the gap between the two was too big. It was to the point where it could crush Tang Chun. That was why Tang Chun suspected that Thanos had already become a god. No, Poseidon shook her head. BB Dong had reached rank 99. Thousand Daos Lu was a veteran rank 99 Soul Master. Poseidon couldn't capture these two people alive. Even if they were on the continent far away from the sea, she wouldn't be their match. But Elder Miek can. His abilities are far beyond ours. I can't think of any other possibility other than breaking through rank 100, Tang Chun said in a low voice. Speaking of which, Tang Chun had also said that he would go into seclusion to break through rank 100. However, in the end, he ended up in a state of delirium. If it weren't for the destruction of the Massacre City, he might still be in a daze right now. Although Poseidon didn't believe that Thanos had broken through rank 100, she couldn't find any other explanation. Soon she asked, "You captured Thousand Daos Lu and BB Dong alive. Where are they? Can I go take a look?" The sea god had ordered her to gather information on the continent to see if anything big had happened recently. The information she got from Tang Chun was enough for her to complete her mission. But now, she wanted to know how strong Thanos was. So now, she wanted to ask BB Dong and Thousand Daos Lu. Of course, Tang Chun said. Our Soul Master Alliance recruited them as sparring partners. As long as they work for 10 years, we'll set them free. And, in front of Poseidon, Tang Chun agreed to almost all of her requests. Actually, this had already touched on some of the Soul Master Alliance's secrets, but he didn't realize it at all. Just like that, Tang Chun brought Poseidon around Great Xia City. On the other hand, Lin Feng didn't care too much about this. He continued to build signal towers in the forests and mountains. According to his current progress, he would be able to spread his signal throughout the entire Douluo continent in a week's time. By then, the transformation of Great Xia City would be completed. Along with the two empires taking over, the preparations for the establishment of the Great Xia Empire would be almost done. After that, he would spend time to invite all the powerful individuals on the continent and the leaders of the various Soul Master organizations to gather in Great Xia City. Finally, he would choose an auspicious day and the Great Xia Empire would be established. Of course, Lin Feng would also carry out many details when the time came. Furthermore, he would make an appearance at the meeting so that everyone would remember him. Then, he would deify the name Thanos. Of course, he would deify Thanos on the surface. Secretly, Lin Feng would deify his name on teaching materials, soul tools, and other small things. With this double insurance, his chances of obtaining the power of faith would be greatly increased. Just as Lin Feng was planning all this, Poseidon left Great Xia City with a look of astonishment on her face. She returned to Sea God's Island. Although she had only been on the continent for 3 days, she had experienced too many things in these 3 days. This was especially so on the last day in Great Xia City. It was too shocking. She also roughly knew from Thousand Dao Lu, BB Dong, and the others that she had fought with Thanos. The pressure she felt was too great. Furthermore, Thanos knew how to use all sorts of tricks. During the battle, BB Dong was careless and fell for his tricks. Many thoughts ran through her mind as Poseidon finally arrived at the sea god's temple. Although 3 days had passed in Douluo continent, only 10 minutes had passed in the godly realm. Following Poseidon's prayer, Poseidon soon received a response. After glancing at the angel god and Rakshasa god, Poseidon transmitted his divine will. Seeing this, Poseidon immediately said respectfully, "Lord Sea God, I have investigated the situation on the continent. It's the Soul Master Alliance." During this time, after a while, Poseidon explained the situation clearly. Poseidon also received an answer to his question. The Rakshasa god's successor, BB Dong, and the angel god's guardian, Thousand Dao Lu, had been captured alive by a soul master called Thanos. In particular, Thanos' strength might have reached rank 100. Although he wasn't too sure, he was much stronger than Douluo, who was at the peak of rank 99. And this kind of situation was too shocking. As a god who had ascended from Douluo continent, Poseidon clearly knew how powerful the laws of that world were. But now, there was someone who could break the laws. He didn't become a god, but had the strength of a god. That's right, Poseidon clearly knew that Lin Feng hadn't become a god. This was because the godly realm would definitely sense when the godly position was formed. However, the godly realm didn't react. Therefore, Thanos couldn't become a god. Chapter 535. God Realm, See God Temple. Seeing Poseidon's expression change so many times, the angel god and Rakshasa god were very curious. What kind of news could make the sea god's expression change so much? Soon, Poseidon reported everything that had happened to the sea god's island. Poseidon didn't say much. After giving some god power, he retracted his divine consciousness back to the god realm. Communicating with the lower realm consumed a lot of god power. After all, to break the barrier between the two worlds, he had to balance the flow of time. Even a strong person like Poseidon wouldn't waste too much time. How is it? How is the situation on the continent? Is there chaos? As soon as Poseidon came back to his senses, the two of them asked anxiously. After all, it was about their god position inheritance. This was very important to them. Poseidon didn't keep them in suspense and said directly, "The continent is unified." The angel god and the others knew a little about the situation on the Douluo continent. After all, the Douluo continent was the most powerful world under the god realm. Many gods had set up inheritances on the continent. They knew that there were three forces on the Douluo continent recently. They were the Heaven Do Empire, the Star Luo Empire, and the Martial Spirit Palace. Now that they were unified, it was a little surprising. Although they were surprised, they quickly came back to their senses and began to ask questions. Poseidon didn't answer. He just pointed his finger, and a divine consciousness was sent into their minds. It contained all the information that Poseidon had reported. After receiving it, the two of them were as surprised as Poseidon. In just a week, the Soul Master called Thanos destroyed the Martial Spirit Palace and made two big empires surrender at the same time. He unified the entire continent so quickly. He was too strong, especially Thanos' strength. He hadn't become a god yet, but he had the power to break the rules of the continent. This was too surprising. Logically speaking, only a level 100 god would have this kind of strength. But Thanos hadn't condensed a god position, and this kind of thing had never happened before. Thanos was too special. At the same time, the two of them also knew what happened to Bibi Dong and Qin Lu. They were captured alive by Thanos. Fortunately, he didn't kill them directly. Otherwise, it would be too difficult to obtain the inheritance of their deity positions. However, the current situation was not very good. Bibi Dong and the Thousand Paths Flow were at risk of losing their lives at any moment. If they wanted to be completely safe, they had to do something. But compared to that, Thanos' situation was obviously more important. After all, having the power of a god before reaching level 100 was something that had never happened before. It was worthy of their attention. Poseidon thought for a while and said, "That Soul Master Thanos is acting too strangely. We need to report this to the Divine Realm Committee." Someone like Thanos, who had power that transcended the rules, had already touched the authority of the god world. That was why Poseidon had suggested reporting it. That's right. This has never happened before. We must report it. The angel god and the Rakshasa god both nodded in agreement. Just like that, the three of them organized their thoughts and immediately headed toward the Heavenly Realm Committee. The situation in Douluo's divine realm was very simple. It was led by 5 divine kings, and they formed the Divine Realm Committee that managed the divine realm. Below them were first-grade gods, followed by second-grade and third-grade gods. As for those below the gods, they were heavenly officials who did not have a deity position, ordinary gods, and the like. Generally speaking, because of the rules of the lower realm, it was extremely difficult to condense a deity position. But as long as it was successfully condensed, it would be a heaven-sent talent. Even if they ascended to the divine realm, their strength would be extremely strong. For example, Poseidon, the god of the sea, directly became a first-grade god after ascending to the divine realm. He was very powerful. The divine realm was very big and filled with energy. The gods also lived in peace with each other, and there was not much competition. In Lin Feng's opinion, this was simply a utopian world. It was too beautiful. God-tier experts were very strong. They were not on the same level as the soul masters in Douluo's world. They were very fast. In less than half a minute, they arrived at the Divine Realm Committee. This was an organization similar to the Soul Master Alliance. There were some heavenly officials and third-grade gods inside to maintain the operation. After all, there were still many lower realms under the jurisdiction of the Divine Realm. Some places had special risks that needed people to deal with. At this time, the god of kindness, Lai Yin, was on duty in the committee. After sensing the arrival of Poseidon and the other two, she quickly asked, "What happened? Why are you in such a hurry?" The speed of the three was not slow. There was a trace of anxiety on their faces, so Lai Yin was a little surprised. She had just patrolled not long ago. All the realms were normal. There were no accidents. In Douluo's world, there is a soul master called Thanos. He broke the rules. He did not condense the divine position, but he displayed the power of a god. This kind of thing has never happened before. That's why we came to report it. We asked the Divine King to make a decision. Broke the rules. How is this possible? Lai Yin said with a look of surprise. One had to know that this was the rules set by the Divine Realm. It had been there since the birth of the Divine Realm. At this time, there was actually someone who could break it. How could it not be surprising? Tell me in detail what is going on. If it is true, we will immediately hold a meeting. Lai Yin said with a serious face. This matter was too big. If it was true, the entire Divine Realm would have to gather for a meeting. Yes, Poseidon nodded and said, previously, it took Poseidon a few minutes to explain the matter clearly. As his voice fell, Lai Yin directly slapped the table and said, "The three of you immediately gather all the gods in the Divine Realm. I will go and call Ji Dong and the others." Yes, the three of them cupped their hands and immediately went out to inform the others. They knew that something big had happened. It had been many years since the Divine Realm Committee had held a meeting with the 5 great divine kings. It seemed that it would be held again today. Thanos' situation was more serious than they had imagined. After the three of them left, Lai Yin quickly left the Divine Realm Committee and went to some of the lower realms to look for people. The so-called rule that gods could not casually descend to the lower realms was set by the 5 great divine kings. Generally speaking, the makers of the rules would not abide by the rules too much. They were above the rules. Therefore, at this time, the other divine kings were all in the lower realms. After all, a day in the divine realm was a year in the lower realms. As long as one did not play for hundreds of years in the lower realms, it would not affect the divine realm too much. After spending about 10 minutes in the divine realm, Lai Yin finally brought the divine kings back to the divine realm. At first, they were a little unwilling to come back, but after Lai Yin told them about Thanos, they could not sit still anymore. As divine kings, the masters of the divine realm, they had a very thorough understanding of the rules. In the lower realms, if one did not condense a divine position, there was no way to unleash the strength of a god, unless a god descended to the lower realms. However, Lai Yin had just quickly investigated the divine realm and did not find anyone who had secretly descended to the lower realms. This could only mean one thing. That Thanos was very special and had broken the rules himself. Very quickly, Poseidon and the others gathered all the gods in the divine realm, and the 5 great divine kings were also gathered here. At the same time, in the world of Douluo, countless Soul Master experts and the leaders of the Soul Master forces were all rushing towards the center of the continent, the Great Xia City. A week ago, Ning Fengji had arranged for people to spread the news throughout the continent that the Great Xia Empire was about to be established. At this moment in the Great Xia City, Tang San had already arranged everything. Most of the members of the Soul Master Alliance in Heavendo City had arrived, and the members of the various branches had also gathered. Some of them were welcoming the various experts, while others were decorating the city. Especially the Great Xia Palace, which had been transformed from the Pope's Palace, had undergone a major renovation. Under Lin Feng's planning, it had a hint of the Forbidden City in his previous life and was filled with simplicity. The square in front of the Great Xia Palace had also changed from round to square, adding many simple elements, making Lin Feng feel a sense of familiarity. At this moment, the great Xia city was incomparably bustling. After all, almost all the Soul Master experts on the continent had gathered to participate in the Great Xia Empire's establishment ceremony tomorrow. In the Great Xia Palace, the upper echelons of the Soul Master Alliance gathered together for a meeting. Those who could attend this meeting were the absolute upper echelons. Ordinary elders could not enter. Only the chairman and the titled Douluo, who was rank 95 and above, could enter. Of course, grandmasters and Flanders, who had special identities, could also participate. As for Ning Rongrong and Dai Mubai, they could participate, but they did not have the right to speak and could only listen from the side. Tomorrow, the Great Xia Empire will be established. When the time comes, the Soul Master Alliance will be renamed the Great Xia Alliance. Since the establishment of the alliance, those who have contributed will be rewarded. We will never mistreat those who are loyal. Thanos' voice was not loud, but it made everyone very excited. After all, this was the establishment of a new empire. As officials who had succeeded the emperor, they would all have great contributions. That's right, in everyone's minds, the emperor of the Great Xia Empire was definitely going to be Thanos. This was because in the entire alliance, whether it was in terms of strength or contribution, the Marvel family was definitely the number one. They could even say with certainty that without the Marvel family, there would not be today's Great Xia Alliance. It was because of this that everyone was convinced by Thanos from the bottom of their hearts. No one would object to him being the emperor of the Great Xia Empire. However, in Lin Feng's plan, the Great Xia Empire did not have an emperor. If there was an emperor, his Great Xia Empire would be no different from the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire. But if there was no emperor, the alliance leader would not have 100% power. That would be a complete revolution. This kind of drastic change in society would allow Lin Feng to completely deify himself. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, he had never thought of being the emperor. And now, he was holding this meeting mainly to explain the situation of the conference tomorrow and to emphasize the political system of the Great Xia Empire. To serve the alliance, I have no complaints, Ning Fengji said solemnly. The Marvel family's contributions to the alliance were too great. The method to control soul power, the simulation of soul skills, the teaching of array formations, man-made soul rings, etc. Even the technology of soul tools was partly due to the Marvel family. Which one of these things was not a family heirloom? However, the Marvel family had released all of them and placed them in the alliance. Not only could the Soul Masters in the alliance learn them, even outsiders could learn them. As for the contribution points spent, it was nothing compared to the cultivation method. After all, these things were too great, especially the method to control soul power. This kind of thing was known to all Soul Masters above the Soul Sage level, but they had an extremely rough grasp of it. There were even many Soul Masters who did not realize it. Only after breaking through to the title Douluo Soul Master would they have a clear sense of it. But at most, they only knew it for themselves, and they did not know much. It was impossible for them to teach others. And through the method to control soul power, even Soul Masters who had just awakened their martial soul could learn it, and it was a systematic kind. Ning Fengji, Yu Yuanjin, and the others could be met. In the near future, the overall strength of the Soul Masters on Douluo continent would increase greatly, and the number of Soul Masters who broke through to the title Douluo Soul Master would also increase by a lot. There was also the man-made soul rings. Lin Feng, who could research such things, was simply a saint. With this kind of technology, the entire Soul Master world would change. It was precisely because of the various contributions of the Marvel family that Ning Fengji and the others did not worth mentioning at all for the Soul Master Alliance. On the contrary, they benefited a lot from it. Now, he said that he had no complaints, and it was from the bottom of his heart. To serve the Alliance, I have no complaints. To serve the Alliance, I have no complaints. To serve the Alliance, I have no complaints. Not only Ning Fengji, but the others also expressed their opinions. They had benefited too much from the Soul Master Alliance, and now they were all sincere. Even the Masters had the same thoughts. After all, he also needed the support of the Alliance to research soul tool technology. If Thanos did not support them, the laboratory would not be able to research all kinds of novel things. Very good. Thanos smiled and said, "Seeing all of you like this, I am relieved. There is not much to say in today's meeting. In the past month, all of you have worked hard, busy everywhere for the establishment of the Empire. Tomorrow, in addition to the reward of the title, everyone will receive an additional 100,000-year soul ring." As Lin Feng's voice fell, everyone's breathing quickened. That was a 100,000-year soul ring. Although it was man-made, they all knew that it was no different from a soul ring obtained from a soul beast, or even better. This was because after absorbing a man-made soul ring, one would automatically obtain a suitable soul skill. There was no need to choose a soul beast at all. It was much more convenient. However, a 100,000-year soul ring was too difficult to create. Ever since man-made soul rings were released, not a single one had appeared. Now that Thanos had directly promised, they felt a little uncertain. However, in the next second, Thanos waved his hand, and more than 10 red soul rings appeared in the hall, illuminating the entire space. These are all 100,000-year soul rings. Everyone was shocked. Just a second ago, they were still worried that Thanos could not take out a 100,000-year soul ring. But in the next second, more than 10 100,000-year soul rings appeared in front of them. They would probably never forget this shock for the rest of their lives. Chapter 536. These 100,000-year soul rings were all made by Lin Feng when he had nothing to do. His current strength had already surpassed the limits of Soul Master. Making a 100,000-year soul ring wasn't too difficult for him. If he had to be given a name for his current strength, he could be called a false god. In Lin Feng's mind, rank 99 title Douluo was just the beginning. If he could borrow divine power, he could unleash the strength of a demigod. This was the situation of Bibi Dong, Qian Douluo, and the others. Above that was the false god, which was Lin Feng's current situation. Although he didn't have a deity position, his strength was comparable to a true god. What Lin Feng needed to do now was to obtain the power of faith, then condense a deity position and become a true god. So many 100,000-year soul rings. Boss Dai, quickly pinch me and see if I'm dreaming. Ma Hongjun opened his mouth wide in disbelief. Dong! Xiao Wu suddenly gave him a knock on the head. Ouch! Ouch, ouch, ouch! Ma Hongjun couldn't help but cry out in pain. Seeing this, Xiao Wu smiled and said, "Looks like it's not a dream." Not only was Ma Hongjun surprised, everyone in the hall was shocked. After all, this was a 100,000-year soul ring, something that soul masters dreamed of in the past, but now there was a basket of them in the hall. Even if they knew that these were man-made soul rings, they were still extremely shocked. At this moment, Thanos waved his hand, and the red light in the hall instantly disappeared. These rewards won't be given to you now. They will be given out tomorrow at the Empire's founding ceremony. In fact, there weren't many people present who could absorb this 100,000-year soul ring by themselves. At this moment, this soul ring was mainly used as a precious item, whether it was to exchange for resources with others, or to give it to the younger generation or someone close to them. It was an extremely precious item. Today's meeting is mainly about, soon, after spending about 10 minutes, Thanos explained the development plan of the Great Xia Empire. This plan was mainly for the insiders to hear. For example, the 5-year plan for Soul Tool technology and the 5-year development plan for the Great Xia Alliance. In short, this was the first 5-year plan of the Great Xia Empire. When the Soul Master Alliance was first established, Lin Feng had come up with a 5-year development plan. Now that he was doing it again, it was much more complete than before. As for the time limit, of course, they had to overturn the previous plan and start over. Most importantly, Lin Feng also emphasized the political system of the Great Xia Empire. As soon as he finished speaking, Hong Yifeng asked, "Elder Mia, who should take over the throne of the Great Xia Empire?" Ning Fengji immediately smiled and said, "Is there a need to think about it? In the entire Great Xia Alliance, only Elder Mia has the right to do so." Yu Yuanjin also nodded, "That's right. Among all of you, Only Eldamia has the right to do so. The few of them asked and answered, and their opinions were surprisingly consistent. It was obvious that they had planned this long ago to push Thanos to the top. However, at this moment, Thanos waved his hand and said solemnly, "Everyone, the principles of the Great Xia Empire are prosperity, democracy, civilization, harmony, freedom, equality, justice, the rule of law, patriotism, dedication, integrity, and friendliness. That's why the Great Xia Empire has no emperor. Our goal is to draw a clear line with the old era and create a new future. Otherwise, if the Great Xia Empire has an emperor, how different would it be from the Heaven Do and Star Luo empires?" Thanos' words came from the bottom of his heart and shook everyone. At this moment, everyone realized that they did not understand Thanos anymore. He had contributed so much and even contributed a lot to the continent's progress. Whether it was in terms of strength or contribution, he could be said to be the number one person on the continent. According to Ning Fengji and the rest, Thanos' goal was to become the emperor. After all, this was a very normal way of thinking. Thanos proposed to unify the continent. Who would believe that he did not want to be the emperor? However, at this moment, Thanos did not have any intention of becoming the emperor. He even said that he wanted to abolish the emperor system and create a new era. Such a selfless spirit was worthy of the title of a saint. In fact, Thanos was not as good as these people thought. Although he did not do it for power or benefits, he did it for fame. Fame was actually not worth much on the Douluo continent, because no matter how famous a person was, it could not be compared to power. This was also what Ning Fengji and the rest thought, so they were very shocked by Thanos' words. However, they did not know that the fame they did not care about was actually the most important thing. This was because Lin Feng would use methods that they could not understand to deify himself and achieve the goal of obtaining the power of faith. In fact, Ning Fengji and the rest did not realize that they had unknowingly become very respectful of Thanos. This was actually on the verge of becoming a god. If Thanos could break through to level 100 or condense a god's seat, these people might directly become his believers. One had to know that this was the most powerful group of people on the Douluo continent. If they had such thoughts and were subdued by Thanos' charisma, what more those ordinary people? Wouldn't they be easily fooled? There's no need to mention the Emperor anymore. Thanos waved his hand and said, "All right, the plan is almost done. In the future, just develop according to the plan. Tomorrow will be the official start of the conference. Everyone, go back and rest early today." As soon as he finished speaking, Thanos flashed and disappeared on the spot. Seeing this, Ning Fengji and the rest did not talk too much and quickly dismissed the meeting. Tomorrow was the founding day of the Great Xia Empire. It was very important, and everyone had to deal with it in their best state. Of course, everyone only left the hall on the surface. They were still discussing in secret. After all, the things that Thanos announced today were too shocking and would affect their future development. They would only feel at ease if they discussed more. On the other hand, Tang San was not too surprised. This was because he knew about Thanos' thoughts a long time ago. Not long ago, Lin Feng told him again, so he was very supportive of it. Now that Thanos had left, Tang San came to Lin Feng's side and smiled. "Feng Ge, after the Great Xia Empire is founded tomorrow, the Alliance will be on the right track according to Mr. Destroy's plan. We can take advantage of this time to complete the 9 Sea God exams." Tang San knew a lot about the situation of the Empire, so he did not talk about this at this time. Instead, he talked about the God exams. "Yes." Lin Feng smiled and said, "I'm fine with it. The main thing is you. You're still 2 ranks away. Cultivate early." With Lin Feng's current strength, it was not a problem at all to forge a 100,000-year soul ring. So Tang San did not have to worry about not having enough soul rings for his clear sky hammer. Tang San had also absorbed all the soul bones, so he was only 1 rank away. "I'm going to focus on cultivating for the rest of the time. As long as I don't take care of things, I'm confident that I can break through in 3 months. Tang San looked confident. 3 years ago, it was extremely difficult for soul masters to cultivate their soul force and break through to the next realm. But now, with the spread of soul power control methods, many soul tools that could speed up cultivation appeared. Now, many people's cultivation speed was greatly increased, especially Tang San and the others who had been exposed to soul power control for a long time. Even if they had reached the level of soul daw and title daw, their cultivation speed was not much different from when they were soul emperors and soul kings. Cultivate well. Lin Feng nodded, then looked at Ning Rongrong, Dai Mubai, and the others. All of you have to work hard and break through to title Douluo. Hearing this, everyone nodded, especially Hulaina. She was very serious. After all, she was the weakest among all of them apart from soul masters. She was only a soul sage, so she had to work harder. Furthermore, Hulaina clearly knew that if she wanted to completely integrate into Ning Rongrong, Tang San, and the others, her strength might not be the most important, but it was a basic condition. Most importantly, if she was weak, Hulaina would feel inferior even if others didn't say anything. Therefore, she had to work hard and cultivate so that she could break through to Soul Douluo as soon as possible. Ning Rongrong, Dai Mubai, and the others had similar thoughts as Hulaina, but their goal was Lin Feng, Tang San, and Xiao Wu. After all, the three of them had surpassed them by too much. Their goal was to catch up with Lin Feng and the other two siblings. Very good, go and rest. See you tomorrow. Lin Feng smiled and didn't stay any longer. He directly left. At this moment, Lin Feng was actually researching a very important project. This project was related to whether Tang San and the others could accompany him into the God Realm. As for the name of the project, it was called Rapid Strength Improvement. Lin Feng was inspired by Bibi Dong, Thousand Daos Flow, and Poseidon and thought of this research. The three of them didn't reach rank 99 through their own cultivation. Instead, they received the help of a god, which was completely different from Tang Chen's self-cultivation method. Lin Feng wanted to research why this help could increase the strength of the three of them in a very short period of time, especially Bibi Dong, whose strength increased visibly. Back in the Continental Soul Master Alliance competition, Bibi Dong's strength was only rank 95. Now, he suddenly reached rank 99. It was too shocking. In the original book, Bibi Dong eventually inherited the Rakshasa deity position and broke through rank 100. This meant that the breakthrough method didn't have any side effects and was very powerful. As long as Lin Feng researched this, he could let the title Douluo reach rank 99 in batches. Of course, this research project wasn't simple. Lin Feng needed a lot of time. At the same time, Lin Feng was also researching another equally important project, and that was Soul Ring Evolution. That's right, it was to increase the age of the Soul Ring that the Soul Master had already absorbed through artificial enhancement. This kind of thing sounded too fantastical at first, but Lin Feng knew that it was possible, because when he was installing the signal tower on the continent, he did an experiment. It was a coincidence. He encountered two 1,000-year soul beasts fighting. One of them was stronger and killed the other. After that, a 1,000-year soul ring appeared on the spot. To be precise, it was a 3,400-year soul ring. At that time, Lin Feng suddenly had an idea. Could he artificially increase the age of the soul ring? With this idea in mind, Lin Feng immediately modified the soul ring. In the end, the experiment was successful. The 3,400-year soul ring was successfully increased to 4,000 years. It was increased to 600 years, but this was the limit, because when Lin Feng continued to increase it, the soul ring directly exploded. The maximum limit of this soul ring was 4,000 years. Any more and it would explode. This was a hard condition and Lin Feng couldn't change it. Of course, this wasn't impossible to change. It was just that Lin Feng's current level wasn't enough for him to change it. In the future, when he was stronger, he might be able to change it successfully. However, this wasn't the main point. After the first experiment succeeded, Lin Feng did more than 10 experiments one after another. In the end, he came up with many conclusions, but there were only 3 important points. First, the age of the soul ring could be increased, but due to its own limitations, it could only increase its age by about 20%. Second, the lower the age of the soul ring, the easier it was to increase it. Conversely, the harder it was to increase it. Third, the above two conclusions weren't 100% accurate. There would always be exceptions. The third point was actually added by Lin Feng. The reason why he said this was mainly because Lin Feng had encountered exceptions. Another reason was that he had too little experimental data, not to mention a 100,000-year soul ring. He hadn't even tested a 5-year soul ring. Finally, his experimental data were obtained from the wild. Lin Feng hadn't personally tested it on a soul master. Lin Feng had thought it through. After the Great Xia Empire was established, he would take some time to catch evil soul masters and use them for experiments. As for man-made soul rings, this was fundamentally different from ordinary soul rings, so there was no point in researching the changes in the age of the soul ring. But then again, man-made soul rings could also be greatly improved. That was to make them like soul bones, which could continuously grow stronger as the user grew. As long as he could create such a soul ring, it would be a great contribution to the world of soul masters. Of course, in Lin Feng's heart, this wasn't as important as the first two, especially the method to quickly increase the rank of a soul master. This was the most important thing at the moment. The others were just side projects. Thinking about this, Lin Feng returned to his room and began to make various calculations. At the same time, he grabbed a dark red soul ring in his hand and silently channeled his soul power into it. This was the man-made soul ring that Lin Feng had been creating. It had already reached 800,000 years. It was estimated that in another month, it would reach 990,000 years. When that time came, Lin Feng would absorb it and soon have another million-year soul ring. Just like that, the night passed quickly. The next morning, the entire Great Xia city was in a state of celebration. Because the Great Xia Empire was established today, countless soul masters were excited. Following the opening of the conference, regulations that were convenient for soul masters were released. Countless people shouted, "Long live the Alliance!" On the high platform, Lin Feng looked at the scene in front of him and revealed a faint smile. Chapter 537. From the establishment of the Soul Master Alliance 4 years ago to the establishment of the Great Xia Empire today, Lin Feng had planned every step carefully, and today was the day to reap the fruits of his labor. News of the establishment of the Great Xia Empire and the Great Xia Alliance quickly spread across the entire continent. That's right, other than cell phones, the Great Xia Alliance had also developed radios. The radio and radio programs were specially produced by the Alliance's soul masters. Even Sea God's Island received the news. Lin Feng had previously set up a signal device on Sea God's Island. When Po Ziti had first arrived, Tang Chun had given her many cell phones and radios. These cell phones and radios were distributed to the guardians of the Holy Pillars by Po Ziti, who then distributed them to various parts of the island. Although they couldn't make it so that everyone had one, the populated areas in every city, such as taverns and restaurants, were all added. Although most people couldn't witness the establishment of the Great Xia Empire with their own eyes, they still imagined a majestic scene in their minds as they listened to the announcement from the radios. According to the plan, the conference would last for an entire day. The morning was mainly to summarize the past and look forward to the future. In the afternoon, there would be a big banquet, and everyone present would be invited. It was now around 11 o'clock, and Tang San had said most of what he needed to say. At this moment, Lin Feng walked out and said loudly, "The establishment of the Great Xia Empire is inseparable from everyone's strong support. Alliance leader Tang has already given everyone the positions you deserve. Next, Elder Mie will give everyone the rewards you deserve." Hearing this, everyone in the Great Xia Alliance became excited. Yesterday, Thanos had already shown them the rewards. It was a 100,000-year soul ring. Now that it was about to be given out, they were looking forward to it. Most of the people who came to watch the ceremony weren't soul masters in the upper echelons of the Alliance, so they didn't know about this. After hearing Lin Feng's words, they were very curious about what Thanos would give out. Just as everyone was looking forward to it, Thanos waved his hand, and a few hundred soul rings appeared in the sky above the plaza. They were all 10,000-year soul rings and were pure black. The sky seemed to darken. Soul rings. They're all 10,000-year soul rings. Someone exclaimed, as expected of the Great Xia Alliance. They're giving out hundreds of 10,000-year soul rings just like that. How many contribution points are they worth? Yes. How extravagant. So many 10,000-year soul rings, it's too shocking. When the soul rings appeared, everyone thought that they were all 10,000-year soul rings because 10,000-year soul rings made up the majority of the soul rings and were below the 100,000-year soul rings. However, someone soon realized what was going on. Wait, look at the top. Isn't that a red soul ring? Yo, it seems to be true. That's a 100,000-year soul ring. Hiss. Everyone gasped. F***CK. It really is a 100,000-year soul ring. 1, 2, 3. There must be at least 30 of them. Over 100,000-year soul rings. This is too awesome. The soul masters in the plaza were all in an uproar as they discussed spiritedly. Everyone was shocked. Man-made 10,000-year soul rings were precious, but soul masters who were soul emperors and above could earn enough contribution points to buy 10,000-year soul rings in about half a year by accepting missions from the Great Xia Alliance. But for a 100,000-year soul ring, the amount of contribution points required was not something that ordinary soul masters could afford. Even a strong soul master like Douluo would have to spend several years to earn enough contribution points to buy one without any background. From this, it could be seen how precious a 100,000-year soul ring was. Most importantly, the Alliance had never sold a 100,000-year soul ring to the outside world since the sale of these soul rings. Due to various reasons, no one had ever seen such a powerful soul ring before. Now that the red and black light illuminated half the sky, everyone was shocked. Soon, Thanos waved his hand, and the hundreds of soul rings quickly flew in the air towards the members of the Alliance in the plaza. Among them, more than 300,000-year soul rings were distributed to the elders, chairmen, finance ministers, and the like. These people had contributed greatly to the development of the Alliance, so these soul rings were won by them. As for the remaining 10,000-year soul rings, they were distributed to the hall masters and deacons of the Alliance. In a moment, the members of the Great Xia Alliance in the plaza were all excited to receive a soul ring for free. The surrounding soul masters could not hide the envy on their faces. Most of them had already joined the Great Xia Alliance, but there were still many who came from the Douluo Empire and did not know much about the Alliance. So at this moment, they were incomparably envious. In a moment, many people had the idea of joining the Great Xia Alliance. At this moment, Lin Feng's voice sounded again. Everyone has contributed greatly to the Alliance, so these are all what you deserve. As for those who have not received any rewards, don't be anxious. The Great Xia Empire has just been established, and when the time comes, there will be a large number of missions. As long as you complete them well, you will be able to receive a large amount of contribution points. And starting from tomorrow, for the first month, the rewards of all official missions will be increased by 30%. Even if you haven't joined the Great Xia Alliance yet, there is no need to panic. You can join the Alliance at any time, and the rewards of accepting missions will also be increased by 30%. Lin Feng's idea of establishing the Soul Master Alliance was very simple, and that was to include all the Soul Masters on the continent. As a result, the Alliance didn't reject any new Soul Masters who wanted to join them. Currently, more than 90% of the Soul Masters in the Heaven Do Empire had already joined the Alliance, and it was only a matter of time before they all joined. And the next step of the Great Xia Alliance was to take over the Douluo Empire. Long live the Alliance! Long live the Empire! Long live the Alliance! Long live the Empire! Long live the Alliance! Long live the Empire! After hearing Lin Feng's words, countless people cheered. They had thought that the rewards of these missions would only be limited to the current members of the Alliance, but they did not expect that there would be no restrictions for Soul Masters who joined later. Hearing the cheers of the crowd, Lin Feng was shocked. After all, there were too many people participating in the ceremony. There were more than 10,000 people in the plaza, and there were more than 100,000 soul masters surrounding the martial soul mountain. They were all soul masters, and the feeling of being cheered in unison was very intense. Seeing this, Lin Feng took advantage of the excitement of the crowd and continued, "Long live the Alliance! Long live the Empire!" Now, the banquet officially begins. Everyone, feel free to eat and drink. In a moment, countless delicacies were served, and everyone ate excitedly. At this moment, the higher-ups of the Great Xia Alliance were extremely excited. They gathered together and happily ate and drank. Thanos did not stay in such a place for long. After drinking a few cups of wine and saying a few words of encouragement, he left. Lin Feng did not stay for long either. He did not like places with too many people, and it was too noisy, so he left very quickly. However, he did not leave Great Xia City. Instead, he found a rock behind the Great Xia Palace and lay down on it quietly. To be honest, it had been a long time since he lay down quietly like this. He still remembered the last time he was like this. That was before he awakened his martial soul. He was in the forest of the Sacred Spirit Village, listening to the sounds of nature, and it was incomparably pleasant. Now, more than 10 years had passed, and the Great Xia Empire had been established. Time really passed quickly. Just as Lin Feng was deep in thought, another person had unknowingly laid down beside him. It was Ulaina. She was lying on her side, and the perfect curves of her body were revealed. It was very alluring. However, she did not make any sound and only stared at Lin Feng's face quietly. She was very considerate. Lin Feng did not say anything and did not even look at her. At this moment, his mind was empty, and he was in a state of relaxation. In less than a minute, a figure lay down on the other side of Lin Feng. It was Zhu Zhuqing. His perfect body was also quietly staring at Lin Feng, and he did not disturb this peace. As for Ning Rongrong, she was not very lucky. She was dragged by Ning Fengji to eat at the banquet, and did not notice that they had left. No idea how long had passed. Suddenly, Tang San ran over. "Feng Gu, something has happened in the Star Luo Empire. What's the situation?" Lin Feng sat up from the rock and asked. Tang San said, "The 4 lower sects over there have joined forces and gathered soul masters to prepare to attack Star Luo City. The Great Xia Alliance had built a large branch in Star Luo City, and its specifications were similar to the one in Heavendo City. At this moment, this group of people was attacking Star Luo City to destroy this branch of the Great Xia Alliance. The reason why these people chose to attack today was because they knew that today was the day the Great Xia Empire was established. The defensive strength of this branch would be greatly reduced, and the strong cultivators would also leave. Under such circumstances, their chances of attacking Star Luo City would be higher. What's the rush for such a small matter? Just send someone to deal with it. Why are you telling me this?" Lin Feng said gloomily. "Also, are these people stupid? Why are they attacking Star Luo City? Don't tell me they want to rebuild the Martial Spirit Hall? Logically speaking, the Great Xia Alliance was incomparably powerful. Now that it had unified the continent, no one should dare to stop it. However, the reality was always more magical than guessing. There was no lack of idiots in the world. These people were rebelling when the Great Xia Alliance was at its peak. Actually, they could not be blamed. The Star Luo Empire was not as convenient as the Heavendo Empire. There were many people who did not even know what the Great Xia Alliance was, and they had never heard of the Marvel family. Although it was said that the 4 lower sects had gathered soul masters to attack Star Luo City, they were not really from the 4 sections. They were just people with ulterior motives. They were using a few stupid soul masters to test the Great Xia Empire situation in the name of the 4 great sections. After all, the establishment of the Great Xia Empire affected the interests of too many people. It was not just the Star Luo Empire. Even within the Heavendo Empire, there were many people who were unwilling to accept it. However, because of the influence of the Great Xia Alliance, no one dared to cause trouble within the Heavendo Empire. They could only accept it. On the other hand, the Great Xia Alliance had not deeply infiltrated the Star Luo Empire. Therefore, There were many places that they could not monitor. Lin Feng even guessed that this was the doing of the star Luo Empire's royal family and Zhu Zhuqing's Zhu family. After all, these two powers were the most unwilling. If they succeeded in testing the waters, they would reap the most benefits. Just as Lin Feng was thinking about this, Tang San said, "Rebuild the martial spirit hall." That is their slogan. However, we still need to observe to see if that is the case. According to the intelligence, these soul masters who rebelled were not very strong. They did not even have a title Douluo. The strongest soul master was only a soul Douluo. Under such circumstances, they could simply send a titled Douluo over to help them. With such strength, they wanted to rebuild the martial spirit hall. It was a joke. I see. Lin Feng waved his hand and said, "Then you can send someone to deal with it." "Yes, I will send someone to deal with it right away." Tang Sen nodded. In fact, he also knew that this was only a small matter. Under the general trend, the so-called rebellion was just a joke. The reason why Tang San came to report to Lin Feng was actually subconsciously. In his heart, he always knew that the key leader of the Great Xia Empire was not himself but Feng Ge. It was because of Feng Ge and the Marvel family behind him that the Great Xia Empire existed today. If it were not for Mr. Destroy, they might still be being hunted down by the Martial Spear Hall. Because of this, when Lin Feng was by his side, Tang San would always subconsciously ask for his opinion. Now that he had received Lin Feng's affirmation, Tang San did not stay any longer and quickly left to make preparations. After being disturbed, Lin Feng also withdrew from his state of emptiness. He looked at Hu Liena and Zhu Zhuqing, held their hands and said, "I am very happy to have you with me, but I have something to do. You can go back." "Yes." The two women nodded decisively. They knew that Lin Feng had a lot of things to do, so they did not talk much and quickly left. Lin Feng looked at them for a while and then directly left Great Xia City. After relaxing for a while, Lin Feng's spirit recovered a lot. Now, what he needed to do was to capture the evil soul masters. His project was also about to start. After all, according to the current situation, it would not be long before he would be completely deified. Originally, Lin Feng estimated that he would obtain the power of faith within 5 years. But now it seemed that the situation was much better than he had expected. At most, he would be able to successfully obtain the power of faith in 2 years. And the research project could also increase his reputation and speed up this progress. Therefore, Lin Feng was still quite anxious about this. There was a saying that said, "Be vigilant in times of peace." Lin Feng was in a state of invincibility at this time. No one on the Douluo continent was his opponent. But Lin Feng knew that this was also his most dangerous moment, because the foundation of his invincibility was in the world he knew. If a strong person beyond his expectations came, he would know nothing about it. There was only one final result, and that was a crushing defeat. Therefore, Lin Feng had been spurring himself to become stronger.